I knew something weird was going to be happening. I was waiting for it.
So, yeah, hey.
Honestly, what else can you do when that song is playing? I feel like it's a
Yeah.
really hyped up song for 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, which
It is a
welcome you
lot.
guys. This is the Sunday show after dark. It is March 2nd. I'm Promise. This is Forrest, and we are taking calls, hopefully from Theists tonight. Has the FBI guy called in yet?
He is not, unfortunately. He is not.
Man,
No, I want it
I've been
very
waiting
badly.
on that.
And I believe he's stopped commenting a little bit too. I think we scared him off. But like, hey, at the end of the day, you can still get your Tommy Valkai t-shirts and everything at valkaimerch.com. And like,
I really love that he set that up for you.
we turned one man's insanity into a way that I was able to like fund some cool stuff over on my side. Like I am now scamming even more people thanks to the people that I've scammed by selling those t-shirts. And I've also, been able to buy more fake wigs and fake passports and beards and things, all in order to continue my lifelong endeavor of evading the FBI. I also see somebody in the chat who their message was deleted by a mod who I guess didn't understand, but it's a bunch of yellow and green and brown dots there. That is in reference to this bracelet. I was on AXP just before this, and I mentioned I had some biologist friends over last night to drink and make bracelets. And my friend Katie, who's a botanist, made me this, which is piss and shit colors. It's all a variety
I was about to ask, I thought this was going to be like some meaningful.
It's piss and shit. It's all yellow and brown and all sorts of things. I had to go do a thing for Patreon. And I came out and she's like, I made you this piss and shit bracelet. I'm like, hell yeah. It's like, yeah, it's just a sweet. Thank you so much to this person in chat for reminding me of how wonderful this bracelet is.
I love that. When you feel like a call is going particularly shitty, you should just hold up your bracelet tonight. That's how good the argument is. Speaking of, if you guys want to give us a call, 720-619-2288. We specifically want to hear from theists. What God do you believe in? Why do you believe in this God? Should Forrest and I believe in this God? And if so, why? Convince us. There's a lot of people that are watching that want to know. And we'd love to have some honest engagement. We've had some really cool calls together, I think. And we've also talked to Dirk about beaver aliens. So you never know.
We learned that I'm a unicorn at one point. It's been a wild time.
Yeah, that was amazing. And about how I'm super angry, obviously. Yep. So all kinds of things. We've already got some callers. Do you see one that you are excited to start with?
I am particularly interested, just kind of looking through here. I'm interested in line 6/4. The top number is 6, the bottom number is 4. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Let's talk to Michael. Hey, Michael, you are live on the line with Promise and Forrest. What did you want to talk with us about tonight?
Hey, guys. Yeah, so I've been working on framework, and it's with morality, and I kind of got to where I feel like I could, maybe prove God or some attributes through it.
Bro, okay.
Sure. Yeah, let's hear. Yeah, so which God do you? Into it? Well, I'll get you started. Which God do you believe in?
The Christian God.
Okay, cool. And so is this your argument for why you think that God exists? Because I think that's what we're going to be most interested in. And we can talk about morality surrounding it, but yeah, I guess I'd like if you can give us a general summary of your argument. Kind of like 1 to 2 minutes.
All right, well,
sort of thing.
All right. Yeah, first it would be to establish that a God exists, and I would do the Christian God. But it's like, all right, so we have morality, and if I wanted to make a society, then if I have another person, you and I discuss morality with one another, and we would try to figure out what the ethics are going to be to how to run this society. So we would pick out morals that are greater than the morals that we have in ourselves, right? So, we would want it to be all loving, all caring, all knowing, all just, things that we aren't, because we're going to want to strive to be better than ourselves. And we want to make sure that what's best for everybody. So we're going to kind of make this perfect morality that we don't have, that's outside of us, that we're going to try to achieve. And we're going to, the attributes that are assigned to it are going to be, divine. It's going to be almost like a divine morality, something that we can never achieve.
I'm sorry to
I
interrupt
have
you,
an
Michael.
issue with this already, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to get a little clarity, because are you basically calling God morality? Because I already not really sure that I understand exactly what your argument is, because currently I don't believe that a God exists, and I think morality is subjective, and to me you're describing, like humans coming up with what we think morality is or should be, and like what our moral standards are, more so than even morality. You're not really describing morality, you're describing like how to find moral standards. So do you have an argument for the existence of a God, or are you just talking about if there was a God, what you think a God would want?
Well, yeah, so that's just, we'll get into it. What were the issues that you had? Sorry, I forgot your name, Forrest.
Well, mine was similar to what Promise just asked you. Is just like, if like it sounds like from what I'm hearing, I'm having a hard time pinning down what your actual argument here is, because you said I'm going to argue for the existence of a God, and it says here in the call screen you have a moral argument for God, and you started by saying we have morality, which morality doesn't point towards a God, and then you went on to say that if we were to try to have a society, we would come up with morality and try to get something better ourselves, which is mostly probably true.
Pretty much what we've done.
Yeah, morality evolves, both biologically speaking, we evolved with morality, and also culturally, morality improves and evolves over time as it is discussed, debated, reasoned, argued, and intelligently designed by human beings. So, like, that all stands to reason. That makes sense. None of this so far points to why we should believe in a God, certainly not the Christian God specifically.
Yeah, so morality is subjective, right?
Sure.
And then, but we also have an objective morality. And so I think the first beginning, the first beginning
is your more objective morality God?
Because you'd have to prove what's the objective source of this morality?
It would be in like the noumenal is where it would exist. Sort of like Kant.
So yeah, I think we're getting really off track. So let's rewind a bit. Why do you believe that the Christian God exists?
It would be revelation and coming to have like a relationship. And this revelation,
So that's the exact same reason that like lots of religious people and lots of conflicting religions believe. So that's not really going to work too much for us.
Okay.
What about, can I ask you like really quickly, just like, I'm trying to, like, I also want to keep on track with why we believe in this God, but I really want to parse into like, do you think that the Bible is true?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that the character of God in the Bible, the God character, Yahweh and all these, like, do you think that the God as described in the Bible is an accurate depiction of who God really is and what God really wants?
At certain points, yes.
Okay.
How do you decide
that was going to be my next question, was to say like there's a lot of horrible shit that God does in the Bible. So how do you know?
Right. Yeah. All right. If when you look at the Bible, you read the stories, right? I see that truth and the law and the morality that it's a story that unfolds, right? So the things that are done in the Bible, they are done by humans that are imperfect. And because we can never, that's why I started out with the morality part, because this is us unfolding through history.
Excuse me, Michael, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't ask about humans. I asked about the character of God, because the character God in the Bible does horrible, hideous, indefensible, inexcusable, unjust, unmoral things. A lot.
Okay.
And so, like I'm curious to know, like, have you read your Bible?
I have.
Okay. So then shouldn't be hard to come up with several. So, well, him commanding slavery is a big one, but there's plenty more. The fact that he killed the firstborn children in Egypt and also plagued the people of Egypt with all sorts of plagues for decisions that their ruler made that they had no authority to change or choose or do anything with. He punished these innocent people for the Pharaoh's decisions. Also, speaking of the Pharaoh, he hardened the Pharaoh's heart and took away his free will so that he would continue to participate in slavery, so that God could continue punishing the innocent people of Egypt that had no control over this. That's another one. Also, there was that time when he set 2 children on fire because they put the wrong incense in an incense burner, and then he threatened the children's parents that if they grieved the loss of their children, he would kill them and the rest of their community as well. There was the time when he made Saul the king and commanded Saul to commit genocide and wipe out the Amalekites, including every man, woman, child, infant, baby, including all of the donkeys and cattle and horses and all the things. And when Saul didn't kill enough people and tried to spare some of the people, God took him out of the position of power, made David the king, had David go commit genocide, and plagued Saul with demons and drove him insane for the rest of his life. We go on. There's the flood where he drowned every single thing that breathed air in the entire world because the humans that he made were behaving badly. And it specifically says that he regretted making them. There was the time when some children made fun of a man for being bald and he sent some bears to maul 40 children to death. We can go on and on and on, man. Like, God does some pretty fucked up shit in the Bible, like throughout the whole thing. So that's what I was asking about. If you don't think that that's an accurate depiction of God, fine, we can talk about it. But if you think that the Bible is true, then we have an issue if you're going to say that this God has a moral high ground over us.
So I think that those things happened and that they're in the Bible. And here's something that, when I look at that stuff, I think to myself, why are these things in the Bible? Because if I'm going to make a holy book, right? Why would I put all
Michael,
of those
real quick, I'm sorry, I want to keep us on track.
Yeah.
So can you just answer Forrest's question, and then you can get to that
part? Sorry, what was the question?
He had a really specific question for you.
Yes, I believe those things are in the Bible. Yes.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you, yes, do you believe that that is an accurate depiction of the will and behavior of the God that you believe in? Do you think that the God of the Bible, as described in the Bible, is real?
Yes and no. And this is where the subjective part comes in.
So then we get back. Right, then we get back to what Promise asked you earlier, which you also didn't answer, which is, how do you know when you read one verse where God says, like, we should love everybody, and if you grow a field of crops, you should leave some unharvested so that homeless people can take free food, and that you should love your neighbor as yourself. And like, how do you know that part of the God is real? But the part where God gives specific instructions on how to keep slaves and how to beat your slaves and how to pass your slaves on to your children as property, that part isn't real. How do you know the difference?
And I agree with this. You don't.
But that was a question.
So you don't.
Why
is what he just said.
Why, Michael? Why do you not own people as slaves? I'm gonna give you that assumption that you don't, and yet you also think it's good to like treat to be kind to your neighbor? Like, why do you pick to follow that one, and why do you not allow yourself the other, even though the Bible calls for both? How did you, Michael, decide which of those to go with and which one not to?
Right. Through my moralities of the way I process information.
And what is your morality? What is your morality based on?
Reason and emotion from my experiences.
And so subjective.
So it's subjective.
It's subjective, correct? Yes.
Right. So
where does a God come into all of this? Why is a God included in your equation of anything in life?
Because what you see in the Bible is an evolution of the morality between us humans and the objective morality that we're trying to achieve. We see this as being played out through the Bible. See, we're always trying to get to God. We're trying to get to perfection.
I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to cut you off so much, but like, you keep saying things that don't make any sense to me. No. You said that we earlier on, you said we have objective morality. Now you're saying that you are basing everything in subjective morality, but the story of the Bible is us trying to reach the objective morality that you believe exists. So whether or not you are utilizing it at this moment, do you believe there is such thing as objective morality?
Yes.
Where does it come from?
It comes from like the noumenal, like you have the phenomenal world, the world of phenomenon, and all right, so it's like cause and effect. You can never know the true cause of anything.
Michael,
yeah.
How would we find out what objective morality is? Is it written down somewhere? Do you think God put it somewhere?
We can never know what that is. We can never know what the objective morality is.
Then how do you know that objective morality exists?
The same way that I know morality exists, because like I said, we can get together, and I'm sorry I'm having this is like my first time trying to explain this, so like, I'm having trouble.
It's okay. It is a show, and we are interrupting you a lot because we're trying to keep you on like a specific train, because otherwise it would be all over the place. So I hope you understand. We're not trying to be rude to you here. It's just we have to keep focused, otherwise the show is not a show. But like the problem here is that like,
thank you.
The problem here is that like I don't understand what Promise just asked you, like, how do you know this thing exists in the first place? And also, how does that then get you to a God, especially the Christian God, who is a monster? So how do we bridge this gap where you're like, I think there's something called objective morality, which I am able to achieve this understanding that this thing exists by totally subjective means, but I think it's there, and then something in the middle that I don't understand, and then we get to Yahweh, the God of the Bible, who is the most evil character in the Bible, is actually a real dude who cares about whether or not I masturbate or have anal sex. Like, what is the connection here?
The connection is first having a reason to believe that such a being would exist in the first place, which means that
great. That's an awesome answer. You have to believe that thing exists in the first place. Why do you believe that thing exists in the first place?
And it would be based in morality, which would first set the tone for that there's something outside of ourselves that we are going to now set.
But you just said, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood you. Maybe I misunderstood you, but I'm pretty sure you just said that you root your faith in the existence of morality in the belief in a God, and you root your belief in a God in the necessity of your faith and morality. How am I missing something here?
Well, I think that that's why at the beginning I was like, well, I don't want to jump. First, the morality part is just to prove that we can use reason to show that there is a thing that's outside of ourselves to believe in, because that's the first sort of point
haven't
of
gotten there yet.
skepticism is that nothing outside of ourselves that exists. Yeah, and I'm trying to draw that distinction first.
Because so far,
Before
all
we
we've
like
gotten
jump
to is
into
that with morality, the furthest we've gotten with this is basically you've admitted that you like your personal, and correct me if I'm wrong, your personal practice of morality is subjective to the point that you are more moral than the God of the Bible because you're already doing better than what the God of the Bible would have allowed you to do. And your reason for that was saying that, you know, if I'm understanding correctly, that God was like growing humanity up and like letting them take their time to become moral. But that doesn't make any sense because even still, even if you're, you know, oh, it's going to take humanity thousands of years and somehow I didn't see this coming when I created them. Why wouldn't you go ahead and say in your book that you supposedly, that's your word for everybody, hey, it's not right to own people as slaves. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Why wouldn't you go ahead and lay that out? For example, when I worked with children for most of my professional career up until last year, and when you're teaching toddlers things, you don't say, because you're so young right now, it's okay to hit your peers because you're not going to figure it out. No, you go ahead and let them know, like, we don't hurt other people. Do you have patience with the fact that they're still learning that? Of course, and you handle it different ways. But the morality is the same. The ethics are the same. You don't like dial those back and then, okay, now you can't hit people. Now it's not okay. Okay, you guys can own slaves now, but it's going to not be okay in a couple thousand years. Do you see what I'm saying there?
I do, and I don't think that is exactly how I would frame. Like, I don't think there is one-to-one. What I would, yeah, I don't think it's one-to-one like that.
So let me ask you a different thing that's just like kind of similar, because let me see if I can actually find. I believe it's in chapter 30. So in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 through 10 here, this dude has sex with his brother's wife, and he pulls out and sploots all over the ground, and God kills him for it. That's a thing that happens right at the beginning of the Bible. So chapter 38, Onan knew that his seed would not be his, and it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife, he spilled his seed on the ground, so as not to give seed to his brother, and the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him. So, like, God kills a dude for pulling out, and then you're telling me he can't manage to just say, don't own people as farming equipment. Don't. He didn't even have to kill anybody for owning slaves. Just be like, yo, y'all, hey, quit it. That he couldn't pull that off, but he can kill a guy for jorking it. He can kill a guy for collecting sticks. He can send bears to maul children for making fun of a bald person. He can, like, there's so many things that God deliberately goes out of his way to kill people over in this book that are the most mundane, ridiculous things in the world. But when it comes to slavery, you think he just can't figure out how to, like, get it across to people, and he just kind of hopes we figure it out eventually in a couple thousand years? Like, what is that?
All right. So, yeah, and no, these are good because these are exactly the questions that I want to answer. So the slavery or the Genesis 30. So the Genesis 30 happened after Abraham. And
the slavery thing happened after Abraham.
Right. Okay. Yep. Both of them did. Yes.
Here, real quick, I think we can shorten this. Can I just ask you this?
Yeah.
Do you think God was ever okay? Do you think he ever thought it is moral to own people as slaves?
No.
Okay, so then why didn't he say that in the beginning?
Well, wasn't the first commandment of slaves in Exodus, the first commandment was to not own slaves?
Nope.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No, actually, Exodus goes out of its way, and Exodus and Leviticus as well go out of their way to tell you where to buy slaves, how hard you can beat your slaves, like different rules for Hebrew versus non-Hebrew slaves. It says your slaves are your property to be passed down to your children. It tells you how, if you have a Hebrew slave who's supposed to be let go after 7 years, how you can give him a wife and then the wife is your property forever, and their children are your property forever. But if he wants to stay with his wife and children, he also has to agree to be your property forever. So you have like this moral loophole that you can like trick him into being your slave forever, even though he's not supposed to be. Like, this is all, it's all pretty well laid out, and at no point is he like, stop owning slaves. Even like in the New Testament, they never say don't own slaves. They say treat your slaves okay, and they say slaves obey your masters. Yep. So it's never don't own slaves. Right. The best you get is be nice to your slaves. That's the best you ever get out of the Bible, is don't beat your slaves too badly.
Pretty badly,
so
but not too bad.
Change.
Yes.
There's a change in the slavery, I guess, is it called, like the slavery we had with the,
don't do this.
Chattel slavery.
Don't do this, Michael.
No, hold on. No, hold on. Let me, hold on. Look, so then, but there's a change in it, because it goes from you're not able to do this at all to you can do this to anybody, but you can't do it to the Israelites, right? You can't do it to Jews, but now you can own
Michael,
other nations.
Why does
right?
But Michael, why does your objective moral source change?
Right.
Because that's the subjective man changing it. That's not God changing that. Okay?
These are
God
God's
said
commandments.
That, it wasn't actually
point
God.
that I'm making.
Those are God's
Correct.
commandments in the Bible. Also, Michael, I just want to be clear. Like, can we agree for a second? There is no such thing as good slavery, right?
Prisons today, it is a form of slavery. Like if a person commits a crime,
yes,
if a person commits a crime,
and it's wrong.
And
Michael, that's not what I asked you. You're correct. Modern day slavery is prisons. Yes, we have a special concession in our I believe it's the 13th Amendment that says that slavery is not allowed except for as punishment for a crime. And yes, we do use prison labor as slave labor. Yes, nobody's arguing that that's not the case. We also think that's evil. The question that I asked you, Michael, is slavery ever okay? Is there any kind of slavery that is morally acceptable?
If the type of slavery you're talking about is where somebody commits a crime, then yes.
So you think that it is okay if someone commits a crime that they should lose their humanity and be forced to work as slaves?
I think that a society can justify that to be able to handle how crimes are committed and how to handle social problems. You know, if somebody goes and robs somebody else and they can't pay that person back, I think that there's
so right now, Michael, I have credit card debt. Should a credit card company be able to come pick me up and take me to some factory to work until I pay that bill off and not let me do anything? And I'm not in control of myself at all.
Like, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, no.
The answer is no, Michael. That's wrong. And you know that. And I feel like you're dancing around this stuff because you're trying to make allowances. But to get us back on track, you're still, all we've done is that you've claimed morality proves God, God proves morality. So we've got this, argument that's not making any sense. And the morality isn't even consistent. But you just said something that I want to go back to. You said something about how it wasn't God that said that about, because I asked you, why are these things changing in the Bible? Why does God change what he said about slavery? And you said you don't think that was God. How do you determine what God said and what God didn't say?
So when it comes to the Bible, or me personally, or in the Bible, how would I determine it?
You personally. How do you find out? Like, how do you know God said one thing, and how do you know he didn't say another thing?
I don't think that I can.
But you just told me that you didn't think. You just told me that you didn't think. You said God didn't say that. So how did you determine?
Right, because I would have to determine. I would have to determine. Yeah. So I would determine it by rating it against what I would say is the highest morality, right?
And there
God
it
told
is.
me to do something was wrong.
There we go. And so you're more moral. than this God that we still don't have any evidence of whatsoever. So why do you need a God? Your morality is better than the Bible's, which is why you have to cherry pick from the Bible to make it work.
I can never.
Barely,
Yeah,
because you're still
barely.
advocating for slavery. Yeah, no, this is the thing, man. That was a very honest answer, and I'm delighted that you gave it to us, is that you don't know what God is or isn't. You don't know what morality is or isn't. You don't know any of these things. You just know what you prefer. You have your preferences based on your cultural heuristics and your personal ideas, and you judge the Bible and the God that was in the Bible based on your preferences and your ideas of your morality, which is why you're able to simultaneously be a functioning human being and not follow the laws of the Bible, which would quickly get you thrown into prison, and also justify horrific shit like slavery as a form of punishment. What the fuck was that, Michael? You're twisting yourself into these moral pretzels in order to justify the monster that you want to believe in, while also justifying the monster itself by saying that it isn't as evil as we think because it's actually what you think. It's just lazy thinking, man. And it sucks that you're just doing this instead of actually criticizing the God that you claim to believe in, whose sins far outweigh your own.
Yeah, because there's a distinction between, and I'm not doing a good job in making this distinction between how, we receive morality, no matter if we did get morality straight from God, straight from the source of God, right? It would still have to filter through our reason. It would have to filter through our emotions, right? It would become objective, no matter how, no, we can get it straight from the source, right? And it's going to become subjective, no matter what.
But Michael, how would we determine if there is a source?
Right. So we get together, you and I, right? We're going to make a society, and we say to ourselves, what do we want the society to be? And
Michael, that's
want
what
it to
we've done.
be
I'm asking.
perfect.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't think you're understanding me.
So that's
how would I determine if there's a God or not?
This is one way. You would start to look at the attributes of that God would have. One of the attributes was that
how
God
do you know
would
what
have
attribute
a perfect
God would
divine
have?
morality.
How do you know what attributes a God would have?
Because they would have the attributes that would be perfect.
Know that? How do you know that? And how do you know what perfect is? How do you know what perfect is?
I don't. It exists beyond my right. I don't know what perfect is. I only have a conception of what perfect is.
Unless Forrest thinks we should keep going, I think we're just getting back to the exact same point in this call, and we have other theists on the line, to where when I finally get you to answer something, then it's like, well, we don't know. And so ultimately everything I'm hearing, which I think is a good place for you to start from, is, well, we can't know. And therefore, why should I believe anything you're saying? That's what this all keeps coming down to is, well, we don't know. I couldn't know. I have no idea. How would I know? Great, I agree. Therefore, why are we saying that there's objective morality? Why are we saying there's a God? Why are we saying any of this stuff when you can't possibly know? You don't know, like, what would perfect be? There's no standard for that. We don't know that a perfect is a thing. It's just your subjective idea of perfection.
Well, you and I, and I was saying you have to go that, and that's fine. I've taken up a lot of time, but you and I can have a discussion right now. What do you think perfect is? Like, let's figure this out.
I don't.
That's how the conversation would go.
I don't think that exists.
I don't think that's a concept that makes any sense.
I don't think it exists either.
But you do, because you think there's a guy who embodies perfection, which you don't think is real, but you do think the guy is real, even though you can't define the guy or tell me what the guy could possibly be like, or why the guy is perfect necessarily. Maybe God does exist, but is imperfect and just as fallible and whatever as everybody else. Maybe God is just as capricious and mortal in his appetites as you and I are, just like the Romans or the Greeks or the Egyptians or the Norse gods. But you don't believe in them because you just don't want to, because you have no reason to believe anything that you're saying. You just do because you do because you do. And you keep coming back to this thing, well, God has to exist because this thing has to exist. How do you know that has to exist? I don't know. But I do know that if God is real, it's this way. How do you know that? I don't know. Well, what does that even look like? I don't know. But that's what God is. And it's just, you're not getting anywhere. You're just telling us what you want to exist without any actual reason to believe it. I have one more question for you, Michael, and then I'm out and done. If you were starving and you and your family and everybody starving to death, would you steal food to survive?
Well, yeah, and I would kill that guy's brother for banging my wife and nutting on the ground also.
Sure, yeah. My question is, would you steal food to feed yourself and your family?
Yes.
You would. Yep. Cool. Should you be enslaved for it?
No, but can I see
so you do understand
that would do that and would be justified?
So you do understand compassion when it applies to you, but when it applies to other people, they're criminals, they should be slaves. Yeah, think about that for a while, Michael, and when you're as disgusted as I am, maybe you will grow out of this belief. Promise I'm done. Are
Michael,
you done?
Yeah, I'll just say this, Michael. I do appreciate that. I feel you've tried to answer our questions, and I appreciate you being cool during the conversation. I just think you said that was your first time calling, so I appreciate you calling in. Go back and listen to this. And if you want to call, I would be interested anyways in taking your call sometime. If you want to call back and really offer a concrete, reason for why you believe a God exists, because I don't think we really got to that. So go back, listen to this, maybe refine your argument a bit, or come up. I couldn't tell you if you asked me what was Michael's reason for believing in a God. I couldn't really tell you. So come up with that. I think that's a good idea just for your own sake. And then if you want, call back. I'd be happy to take the call. I appreciate you engaging with us and in the way that you did.
Yep. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call and giving me the chance. Yep, bye.
Of course. Thanks, Michael. Have a good night. The
what
old
a ride.
Plug into itself, to power it up argument. We have plenty of calls, but if you want to try to get a call in before we close lines, it's 720-619-2288. Forrest, I'm looking at line 15. Are you down for that?
I'm down with that, yeah. That sounds like a wild ride. Let's do it.
It really does. We're going to talk to Powder Emperor.
I believe we've talked to Powder Emperor before.
I have a feeling we have.
I think I have.
Good evening.
Promise and Forrest, how are you doing?
Good evening. Doing pretty well.
If I remember correctly, Powder Emperor either is Imperious or has the same argument style as Imperious.
Well, I'm on my cocaine binge right now, so I'm Powder Emperor.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, are we gonna have any kind of close to a serious discussion, or are we just gonna?
Well, we can't. Let's just not no ad hominems, and we can no subliminal passive. Let's just have a good discussion. How about that?
You first.
What's your reason for calling?
My assertion, I think I put in the call in, was I don't having faith in atheism is illogical, and it doesn't reflect the scientific method.
Cool. Okay, I don't have faith in atheism, so
I don't either. That's
fine,
not a thing
and
that exists.
I don't really care about the scientific method. That has nothing to do with why I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist because I don't think that it is logical to be a theist. So can you tell me why it's logical to be a theist? Why should I be a theist?
Yes, an essential part of the scientific method is appeal to the best explanatory hypothesis.
Yeah, I don't care about any of that. I just want to know. Why you think I should believe in a God. Explain it to me like I'm 5. I was homeschooled using a Christian curriculum. So just tell me why I should believe that a God exists.
Because it's the best explanatory hypothesis for the existence that you are in.
No, it's not. Pardon me, that's not true. It is the best explanatory hypothesis. It is not the best hypothesis, nor is it a testable hypothesis, nor is it a hypothesis that actually stands up to anything. It is an easily rejectable hypothesis. I'm pretty sure, aren't you the one that said that you're a lawyer and that means that you have a Juris Doctorate and that means that I should bow to you for having a superior degree?
You want to start the ad hominem? Because we can start that if we want. and I
He
can
sounds
roll
like
you
he's
over
just
again.
quoting you right now. He's just
That's
asking
not an
you a
ad
question.
hominem.
No, I made a
asked you if that's
specific
what you
assertion
said.
that you can't answer, so you riled up and emotional. I just
No,
said
I
it
asked.
does
I'm
not
asking you
reflect
if
the
that's
science.
what you said. That's all.
I said the scientific method, okay, an essential part of the scientific method is the appeal to the best explanatory hypothesis.
I don't care about
Okay.
the
But
scientific
I
method.
just
Can you
I
just
just
Okay,
tell
so
addressed
me?
you
that.
don't care about the scientific method, you don't care about science. There we go.
That's
I
not
didn't
what
say
care
I
she
don't
about
said.
what
care
your
about science.
emotions
That's
tell
not
you.
that's not what I said. So
What is
I'm
science?
asking you.
What is science?
I,
What are
hey
scientific
Powder,
experiments based on?
I can hang up on you if we
Oh,
are just
because
calling for you
you
to run
can,
the
but you
show.
just got
I'm asking
exposed.
you questions. No, I'm asking you questions. Nobody
Yeah.
got exposed for anything.
Okay,
Can you
go
please
ahead.
just can you please tell me why I should
Mhm.
think that a God exists? Also, is
Because
there a
it's the best
specific God that you believe in?
Well, let's start at the premise. Is there a God? It's the best explanatory hypothesis.
If
For
you're a theist,
example,
I
there's
assume you think that there's a God.
yeah,
Can you tell
no.
me
If you
why
want me to
I
get
should?
into it, I can. I can.
That's
Well,
why
hold
I'm
on.
asking
I
you the
can.
question.
Sure, I can.
Yeah, because this
Okay.
is the issue, man. Is that like
Mathematical
we're trying.
Okay, so go ahead. I'll wait till you're done. Go ahead, guys.
I appreciate it. We are the hosts after all. So like, because this is the thing that I remember several conversations I've had with you over this time, and like it is always this way. Is that like it? I don't. We're trying to just hammer something out here. We're trying to get to the root of this problem, and you keep accusing us of like either ad hominem, which nobody has committed an ad hominem yet, or you'll put words in our mouth and say, okay, so you don't care about science or the scientific method. Promise just said that she wasn't familiar with it because that wasn't her upbringing. I do care about the scientific method, and I agreed with you that your hypothesis of a God is very explanatory, but equally as explanatory is the hypothesis that the universe is a simulation in a computer game. And that doesn't mean that it's true. It's just easy to explain everything with that hypothesis. But in order for a hypothesis to be something you take seriously, you need to actually have experimentation and data to back it up. And you don't have that for a God. So I can say anything is an easily very explanatory hypothesis for the universe. It doesn't make it real. And so I would end up rejecting that hypothesis as unsubstantiated. You have to be able to fail to reject the hypothesis in order to move forward with it. And like, you haven't given me a reason to do that yet with this God. You've just said this God exists, so it does, basically. And that's like just not good enough for me.
So I've had 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Do I get that same amount of time or?
Well, if you
How
can
about
behave, sure.
like that? Can you just
Okay, well,
answer?
I will. You want the answer, right? Okay, so first of all, it begins at the fundamental fabric of reality, the 213 cosmological constants. Then it expands to the mathematical impossibility that the trillions of calculations, the trillions of restrictions, the trillions of laws that restrict the universe could have occurred at one moment without a mind. Because randomality, okay, and random chance does not create laws, patterns, or pattern recognition. By definition, it doesn't. In addition, information
That's not true.
Yes, it does. Yes, it is. When does random chance ever create information?
Quite a bit, actually. If you talk to anybody who does like, well, I'm in the middle of speaking, actually. So if you talk to anybody who does like, we have a few hosts on here who are like software engineers and whatnot, and who do we say like random number generation. I remember we talked to somebody, or we had somebody on that did random number generators. That was like his job. And frequently in the machine that was designed to be as random as possible, they would have patterns pop up. And when you talk about information in the way that you are, generally speaking, what people are saying, and you know, correct me if I'm off base of what you're getting at here, but generally when people use the word information in the way that you are, it comes down to like something like, for example, DNA, where it's like, this is a coded sequence that has some sort of repeatability, some sort of patterning in it that can convey some message. And like, yeah, that can pop up in its most basic form, at least through random processes. And once that gets started, Darwinian evolution takes over, and it just kind of follows very, very logically from there. So like, I don't know, man. I feel like we can go down this like weird Darth Dawkins rabbit hole if all we want, and it's not really going to get us anywhere, because at the end of the day, I feel like...
So you come on and ramble and have a struggle session to yourself and don't want people to talk. Very leftist.
See, that's
be
actually, it's
answering
funny.
him right
it's
now.
funny.
You're wasting your time.
You just
not
ran.
responding.
I think I've had 36 seconds. I've timed myself to be able to talk, and he's at about 5. So if you don't want callers to have it, if you don't want a good faith caller, don't have people call.
The problem is literally what I was saying when you started throwing a temper tantrum is that we can go down this Darth Dawkins rabbit hole of like presuppositionalist whatever, of like, we have to assume there's some mind and the randomality and the blah, blah, blah. And like, we can do this all day long. It's not going to get us anywhere because I hypothesize and now have some evidence that at the end of the day, there is absolutely nothing that we could possibly say that would avoid the conclusion of you saying, well, you didn't let me have complete control of the entire program and say whatever the hell I wanted to say. And when I said that this is science definitively, which you have admitted you don't have a science background, you're a lawyer, supposedly. So your gross misunderstanding of science is all you have. And when we don't accept your gross misunderstanding of science, that means that we don't like science. And then you're going to blend in some weird straw man what you complain about ad hominems, and then are going to say, well, you're behaving like you're a liberal, you're behaving like you're a leftist, you're behaving like this or that other thing that you don't like. And then you're going to walk away from this as if you've won an argument because we simply refuse to play with you, because we didn't want to wallow in the same shit that you are and didn't want to just let you bark at us this whole time. That means that we're too scared to talk to you. When really all it is us just being genuinely kind of bored of the attitude, because it's been 7 minutes.
Time by pointing out what kind of conversation we can engage in, because maybe you're willing to actually, because if this is real, if this God exists, I assume you have lots of ways to point this out to us. So, but I realized something, because I don't know that I've talked to you. I'd like to know specifically, how do you define God?
That's a good question.
Have you unmuted now? So how would you define
do I
God?
get the 6 minutes to counter? If not, it's just bad faith, and you guys have proved my point. I've won.
So no, it's fine. Do I get 6 minutes? And if you're answering honestly,
okay, so don't say you're good faith and you're a cunt and he's a loser.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's that you're just going to let your emotions get.
I love it. I'm just going to make this clip where he calls in and says, "Let's not ad hominem," and then we'll fast forward to where he calls me what he just did. That's cool.
Yep.
I'll give you one last chance, and then I'm going to request that you be banned from the show, because I don't want any other host to deal with what you said.
Before you do, I'm going to go ahead and make another testable prediction here, because that's how science works. That Imperius here, when you unmute him, is not going to answer anything you say, but is instead going to whine and bitch and moan about how unfair we are because we, as hosts of the call-in show, kept control of the call-in show, and that we are tone policing him and restricting his blah, 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 and this isn't a good faith argument, and he's not going to say anything useful at all. He's just going to bitch about the fact that he didn't get to behave like a fucking child on live television. That's my idea. That's my thought.
Let's see if you're a prophet. I'm going to give him one last chance. Here's my question.
Sure.
I would like to know his definition of God, and you get to keep talking as long as you're answering stuff. So if you waste my time by not answering the question in the beginning, then I know that you don't want to engage honestly. I've been patient. I haven't said anything. I'm just asking you questions. So if I unmute you and you answer my question without wasting our time, we can continue the conversation. I'd like an apology for the ad hominem you just used, but I'll be okay without it. So again, the question is, can you tell me your definition of God?
When you're good faith, I'll be good faith too. Simple.
See, exactly. I told you.
There
He's just going to bitch about how we're not good faith.
It's very simple.
Powder, can you tell me one point? So Powder,
it's very simple.
I think he really is in his cocaine era. I'll be honest with you.
Honestly. So I'm going to ask you when I have had bad faith during this call, because I've barely said anything. And I've muted you a couple times because we've been trying to communicate something, because I personally have been eager to hear your answers, and I've been trying to give you a chance. Here I am again, rescuing you in this conversation. Would you like to tell me either your definition of God or when I have had bad faith in this conversation?
When you allow dialogue, I'll answer.
Okay.
I don't think he stopped talking that whole time. I don't think he stopped talking. Wait, can I ask him questions? Can I ask him questions?
Oh, sure, go for it.
I have Powder Emperor / Imperior / person who calls himself a lawyer but also behaves like a fucking toddler and could not possibly handle their own in front of a judge, at least not a judge anywhere where I come from. Do you feel big and strong when you call women bad words? Does that make you feel like a big, strong man? You are unmuted.
Only when I'm giving them a...
I have another question for you. Do you think that anyone takes you seriously on this show at all? That's the next question.
Nobody takes...
Do you it's my next question that I have for you, Powder Emperor Imperious. Can you tell the difference between someone who is genuinely laughing at you, even if they're not outwardly doing it, and somebody who is trying very hard to have a serious discussion with you, but just can't handle your burgeoning intellect? Can you tell the difference between those two things? I have another question for you. Do you think that wasting your time on mute and just being unmuted for a fraction of a second like this is a good use of your time, or do you think that it's a bad use of your time?
This is clips for you.
I have a question for you, Powder Emperor. Do you think that, like, right now at this moment, we have on average about 25 to 40,000 people that watch these shows every week. Do you think that any of those people are going to be swayed by your antics and behaviors to be believing in the God that you believe in?
There's more people that listen.
Do you think, Powder Emperor, that, like, when we talk to you, and I remember you're the one who always, like, bitches about, like, all the other heathenist Christians, and your ridiculous super Catholic bullshit is the only one. Do you think that, like, the rest of the super Catholics listen to this and they're like, yeah, this guy who can't even use his real name and calls in and is constantly banned over and over, this is the champion. This is the guy that really gets it. Do you think that you're like a champion for these people? Do you think that, like, when people tune into this show, he just keeps going? That's the thing, is that this dude is so up his own ass that he cannot let it go. As long as he has airtime, he's going to take it. I guarantee we could do this for 10 hours.
I can't wait to go make this clip where I don't have to edit anything. I just have to fast forward where I start with him calling. Wasn't it the first thing he said? Hey, let's promise that we're not going to use ad hominems. Okay, when have I been known to do that? And then cut to him calling me the C word because I dared ask him to answer a question to define God. What? Yes.
That's a good question. Also, Powder Emperor, do you know what the fucking ad hominem is? Because I don't think you do. What's an ad hominem?
Do you know what?
So, what an ad hominem is, by the way, for everybody watching, is when you supplant an argument with an insult. You can insult like if I say that Powder Emperor is a little bitch, therefore he is wrong, that would be an ad hominem. And so I would never say that. I say that Powder Emperor is a little bitch and he is wrong. So that's not an ad hominem. That's just me describing the man. He's just mentioning the fact that he's a little bitch who can't handle an adult conversation and has to scream and yell and get all in his emotions and talk over people and shout at people and call women bad names because they had the audacity to question his intellect and authority. Powder Emperor, are you a sexist piece of shit or just a regular piece of shit?
And explain.
See, that's what I'm talking about. The man will sit here all fucking day and let this happen to him because his ego is so big, he literally can't let it go. He thinks he's winning. As long as he's here being laughed at, he thinks he's winning.
We could treat
That's
it
what little
like,
bitches do.
You know those people that go to like the radio and they claim that spirits are speaking or like God is speaking through the radio and they'll like change the channels? We could just pause and unpause him and maybe it would eventually string together an actual sentence that answers some kind of question. That would be amazing.
It's crazy.
I tried to have that conversation.
Can we just leave him on mute for the rest of the show? Can we take other callers and just leave him there and just see how long he sticks around? No, it takes up a line, and there's serious people.
You can. It costs money.
It does cost money. It does cost money.
It's okay. He's probably making the line more money right now with these clips he just gave us.
Is true.
Thanks, Powder. We thought you could prove
Powder
God,
Emperor,
and instead you're supporting our work.
Little bitch makes a weird noise, Powder. Little bitch makes a weird noise, Powder. Oh,
it's still,
there we
hung
go.
up. Oh.
We got him. We finally got him to hang up. All right. The weird noise was him dropping that receiver. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Well, where do we go from here? I don't know if
That's
it's
what we're all here
only
for.
up or only down, depending on how you look at things.
Yeah.
I'm interested in line 18, unless you have a preference. 18, 5,
No,
whatever
that
we
sounds
call it.
great.
Okay, cool. Let's talk to
Yeah,
Anthony.
I usually go with the left number.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Anthony, you are live with Promise and Forrest. What did you want to talk with us about tonight?
Well, I answered the little questionnaire on the chat when I logged in. It said, "Do you believe in God, and are you willing to talk about it?" And so I said yes. And so, generally speaking,
love that.
I guess I want to talk about why I believe in God, and mainly why I believe in the Christian God.
You know, I appreciate you following up.
Yeah, who knows where this call will go, but I just want to let you know, Anthony, I already appreciate that you're not playing games. You're like, this is the God I believe in, and I want to talk about why I believe in it. That's all I want out of these conversations. Even if at the end of it, we both just say, look, we don't agree. Let's move on. Thank you for starting there. To anybody else listening, this is how I like calls to start. So
3% of the chat poll said that they would call in and defend God. That's 3% of the entire world who watches this program. So like I wish more people would follow through like you.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope I can follow through then.
Cool. Okay, so Christian God. So why do you believe in the Christian God? And we'll give you a minute to state your case.
Okay. I'll start kind of wide and then narrow down. I believe the Bible is the way that it's constructed through many different authors over time is a way for the Bible itself to demonstrate truth, to demonstrate divine foreknowledge, and in such a way, the New Testament witnesses are supported by the Old Testament. I don't think it's circular reasoning because the New Testament is external to the Old Testament. They're two separate witnesses of the same thing. And the prophecies and specifically the types and shadows the Old Testament has types and shadows that prefigure Christ that are veiled in the Old Testament, but they become unveiled through the light of the New Testament. So I believe that through that construction of the Bible, it demonstrates truth. And I believe Christianity is falsifiable because Christianity is the best explanation for all the prophecies and the unveiling of the types in the Old Testament that no other explanation can account for. So if there's a better explanation for all of these prophecies and types, then that could supplant or falsify Christianity. That's kind of it in a summary.
It's a lot. Promise.
You want to take it first, Forrest, or you want me to?
I mean, my issue with it is that like I feel like it's very self-serving to say that like the prophecies of the Bible are like fulfilled and therefore it's like proof of Christianity, because like at the end of the day the prophecies that we're talking about aren't good prophecies, or they are prophecies that are fulfilled within the same book. And so just like it doesn't really do anything for me. And at the end of the day, even if you could sit here and demonstrate that like every bit of the Bible is super duper true, that doesn't get you out of the moral or like arguments around this God or the reasons why we wouldn't worship it in the first place. It just doesn't do a whole lot for me, just to try to come up with some super esoteric argument about this God, knowing that at the end of the day, this God is still what it says in the Bible. And like the best that it's got is like there's wars and rumors of wars and stuff. And it's like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not as well versed in these sorts of things as Promise is. So she'll probably do a better job than me.
Well, Anthony, if because you that was a lot of points. I appreciate you laying it out. I'd like to kind of go just down one trail for now, if we can. What would you say is your number one? Like, would you say it's the prophecies? Would you say, what is it about the Bible where you're like, this thing is true and this is the story of the God that I believe in?
I think it first starts with the prophecies. The prophecies look forward to okay, go ahead.
I can address those because I used to believe, and I also would have said that's one of my reasons. So the prophecies in the Bible, the few of them that we can kind of say were like attempts at prophecies, because so many of them, again, like Forrest said, they're already just like somebody tells a story and then, wow, it's fulfilled all of a sudden, and they write it down also. Those are really sketchy to me. I hope you can understand why. But some of the other ones are more, I think Matt Dillahunty is the one who says this. It's kind of like ordering ketchup at a restaurant that serves hot dogs and then being shocked when they bring it to the table. It's like, well, yeah, there are going to be famines, there are going to be wars, there's going to be storms. Like, these things are not very interesting predictions. In fact, what's the name of that guy that makes these predictions all the time now? Do you know who I'm talking about, Forrest? Anyway, there's this guy, and I think he predicted or supposedly predicted like 9/11 and all kinds of stuff. And every year he says all kinds of things. Somebody in the chat will say.
Oh, okay. So a modern guy. I thought you were talking about like the people who like look like Nostradamus type shit. Okay, yeah.
A modern guy. So there's things like that happen where even those, which I also don't believe are prophecies, are still more convincing, more specific, and more interesting than prophecies from the Bible. So for me, it's like, why would I take this seriously when we see predictions happening throughout history, throughout cultures, with different mediums, so why am I giving this special privilege and assuming only the Bible is doing that from God? Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm not sure exactly which prophecies you're referring to in the Bible that you're not considering prophecies, but I see some very clear, specific prophecies.
There's several times in the Bible where it says this thing is going to happen, and then later in the Bible that thing happens. And so it's like it's as if, in the Lord of the Rings, supposedly, like Eru Ilúvatar had already set out everything in motion, and Frodo destroying the ring was the way that the world was supposed to happen and the way things were supposed to unfold. I cannot then point to the story of the Lord of the Rings as evidence for the existence of Eru Ilúvatar. That is just what's written in the book. And so, for most of the Christian prophecies are things that are fulfilled and predicted in the Bible. So that's not a real prophecy. And most of the other ones are things that are always happening, like wars, famines, rumors of wars, people coming against Christianity, people trying to outlaw religion, people do like all these other things that Christians point to. Those are just things that happen forever all the time and don't mean anything.
Right. I got 2 points on that. You kind of started to touch on the internal issue of, well, the Bible says it happened and then it happened. I don't agree with that 100%, because that's where I kind of tried to explain in my kind of opening summary. The construction of the Bible, the Old Testament, is written looking forward to Christ, and it's not saying Christ came in the Old Testament. It wasn't fulfilled in the Old Testament. The New Testament, which was basically the text anyway, was written down 400 years, or Christ came 400 years after the last book of the Old Testament. And so I don't look at the Bible as one unit necessarily, in the sense that the Bible says it's true because it's true because it says it's true. I see two distinct witnesses. The Old Testament is one witness and one testimony, and the New Testament is a completely separate one. So in that sense, I don't see it saying one source saying it's true because it's true, like the example of the book you said. And the other, Anthony, the other point was, can I just address the prophecy that Forrest mentioned was wars and rumors of wars are not specifically about Christ, and so I don't.
Let's talk about Christ,
those prophecies.
Yeah, I went ahead and pulled up just to be. Go ahead. I'll save this for later.
Yeah, here's my issue. So even if in the Old Testament it were to be like super, super specific and say, on this exact day in this building, a virgin is going to give birth to a child, and it's going to have a freckle on this side of its face, and that's how you're going to know. And then I go read the New Testament and it says, hey, on this day, this happened. Everything was exactly. Where is my evidence that that is true? That's my problem. I don't believe that a virgin had a child and that child was the son of a god, and that child ended up crucified and then resurrected from the dead. Why should I believe that story? It's a story. So that's my hang up here.
Okay, well, this is where it gets complicated. And this is where the types and the shadows come in, because the types and the shadows are a prefiguring of Christ and his work. And so I don't think the virgin birth necessarily could no one can prove that one way or the other. That's just something that I take on faith because of how I see the other truths demonstrated. The Jews did not know that the Old Testament scripture prophesied that the Messiah was going to suffer and die. But
yes, it did.
Once Christ came, once Christ came, suffered and died, then that opens up and sheds light. When you look back on the Old Testament, you can see, oh my gosh, there's this Passover lamb. The Israelites were saved because they applied the blood to the doorposts. Oh, look at the story of Abraham offering up his life.
So I just pulled them up. I was actually looking for it. It specifically has things where it's like, the Lord will raise up a prophet from among yourselves, from your own kinsmen. You are to pay attention to him. I'll raise up for a prophet among your kinsmen. I will put words in his mouth. He will do everything I order him. And that's supposed to be referring to Jesus. It also, and that's in Deuteronomy and Isaiah, it talks about like the suffering servant that is to come and bear great suffering and will be like the prophet. And like that's another thing that they say is fulfilled by Jesus. They see here Ezekiel. Sorry, go ahead.
Isaiah, Israel, the Jews do not believe that's Jesus. They believe that's the nation of Israel himself. There's no Jew that I know of, unless they're a Christian. So back in the day, I
found this in a list of Christian prophecies that Christians believe in. So maybe the Jews don't. I don't know. Right. But like the point is, when we talk about this stuff, it's important to point out the fact that there are over 40,000 denominations of Christianity alone. And if you have two Christians in the room and you ask them about what this Bible passage means, you will get three opinions. So, like, it's
you won't get
for you to
you
say
won't get 30,000. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
No, there's a delay. It's bound to happen. What I'm saying is that like these are the prophecies that I am confronted with on a regular basis, and they're not prophecies. They're just part of the same book.
Well, and Anthony, here's another major problem is that if you have somebody writing the New Testament, first of all, way after these events supposedly occurred, can you tell me what's preventing them from fudging the story to match the prophecies that they have held so dear to them from the Old Testament?
It's complicated, and it's the
No, but that was a real question. What's stopping them from doing that? Why should I trust that? The skeptic in me can't trust that, because honestly, that makes so much sense for them to fudge the story in order to make it fit the past prophecies. We watch prophets do that now all the time.
I don't think because of the nature of the types and shadows you can fudge the story, because it's not reading back into the text. It's going back into the Old Testament and discovering that what Jesus Christ is and what he did was actually prefigured. An example of that is if you just kind of look at the nation of Israel and the Old Testament covenant and all the laws, the sacrificial system, the blood, the Passover blood that was applied to the door. You know, even the deliverance of Israel is a type, where Egyptian bondage is a type of bondage to sin, and the Passover lamb was the blood that was applied to the doorpost, so that the spirit of death that came in didn't kill them. And the deliverance out of Egypt, wandering in the 40 years in the Promised Land, is one big.
I know the stories well. You're not answering my question. What's stopping you from saying, "Oh, and then Jesus came and died, and his blood, and there's blood there, and so there's blood here, and look, a prophecy fulfilled. This is a thing." Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's very vague stuff. And do you not see there was already clearly an obsession with blood sacrifice? Of course, that's going to come up again, and they're going to connect dots that have no reason to be connected.
I guess my answer to that, my direct answer, because I don't want to not answer your question, is the quantity and the quality of the prophecies and the types and shadows taken all together lead me to lean against your particular conclusion.
I need you to give me a reason to lean into it. So I'm asking, what is my reason for thinking that any of this is anything other than a story, self-contained? Like, is there any evidence for any of this currently, right now?
Well, it's the witnesses of the New Testament
There aren't
There's
witnesses.
multiple.
There's somebody that says there are, but that's not what I'm asking.
Well,
Right now, what is
okay.
our evidence?
Okay.
Do you think this God still exists? Maybe we should have started there. Do you think this God is alive and well?
Well, I do.
Okay, so where's the evidence of this God?
Well, again, it's my conclusion to the way the Bible is constructed is that because of the prophecies and the types and shadows, and because of the witnesses of the New Testament, the New Testament claims that this happened. The Old Testament looked forward to that. What I'm trying to explain is the prophecies and the types and shadows are evidence of divine foreknowledge of the
You said this
crucifixion and
same thing
resurrection.
many times now. So I'm just going to translate this for at least how I'm hearing it, is that there's this book,
Okay.
and it says these things in part of it, and then it says these things in other parts of it, and they connect. And therefore, currently, there's this massive thing that must be true and exist. And for me, that's not a good reason to believe this, because I can get that same story from Muslims or from some religion I've never even heard of, and have some new text that says, look, here's this thing, and it has this prophecy, and it says this God exists, and that's my evidence. I'm really deeply curious how you know that this God is existing outside of this story.
Okay. Number one, and I'm glad you brought up the Muslim, that you can't do that with Islam, because the Quran is written by one person in one lifetime. The Bible
Anthony,
is constructed.
I'm asking again. You're going back and appealing to these books. Does the Quran not have
prophecies?
Yeah, it totally does. But I'm asking how you are how do you know that this is true? And if the only, we can go ahead and be done with the call. If the only thing is you're like, well, this book, then I'm sorry, that's not a good reason for me, because somebody can come to me with any book and say it's so well written and it's so cool and it says these things here, and then when you go back and read The Hobbit, you'll see how it ties back in with the thing that happened in the Two Towers, which is so cool because of the history. And it's like, I need to understand why we are believing that these massive claims that are made in this book exist here and now, because if that's your reasoning, I have to tell you, this doesn't sound like a helpful God to believe exists, because this God, I guess, wrote this book that isn't very convincing and then left us with no other evidence. The evidence is this book that's been mistranslated and retranslated over and over and over again, and has extremely vague, quote, prophecies that Forrest and I don't find to be prophetic at all. And the stories, the most compelling story you have is about blood sacrifice. I'm really struggling here.
I have a question really quickly. Like, Anthony, you kept referencing this, the blood of the lamb smeared on the doorpost so that the destroying angel would pass over their house, and that's what Passover, and this ties in. Do you think that actually happened? Like, do you think that the story of Exodus and like the whole lamb's blood thing, do you think that's true?
I do.
Okay. So then why is it necessary for God to kill a lot of children so that some children won't be killed because some people murdered some lambs and smeared blood all over their doors, all so that he could make a prophecy to himself about himself, so that later on he could give birth to himself and sacrifice himself to himself? Why is that a necessary thing to be like this prophecy fulfilled, and it comes at the cost of the lives of a bunch of innocent Egyptian children? Why is that necessary?
I don't know if that's a question about, if that's a moral question or not. I don't want to get into the morality of God. I'm sorry?
Well, no, you shouldn't want to get into the morality of God, because God is an immoral monster. My question is, if you believe this story and you believe that the prophecies are like your best evidence for God, because that's what Promise asked you at the beginning. She asked you, what's like your best reason to believe? And you said the prophecies. And one of the prophecies that you keep coming back to is that Jesus was the lamb who was sacrificed. And we see that referenced back in the Old Testament when the Jews had to sacrifice a lamb and use their blood to protect their children. And now the blood of Jesus, the lamb, protects us all. So why the fuck is it necessary for God to slaughter a bunch of innocent children in order to make a prophecy about him saving the world that won't even be interpreted that way for thousands of years after the shit happens. Why the fuck is that the order of operations for this all-knowing, all-powerful being?
Well, I think it's a good picture of what Christ represents, of what his work is doing.
You think
Christ
that
represents
because
killing. Christ represents killing innocent children, and Christ represents blood magic.
No, everybody is going to suffer death because everybody
Especially
has
those
sinned and falls
kids.
short of God. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into the moral issue because that's not why I believe. I'm simply calling of why I believe. I go to that example because it is a good example for the.
I can't get past that, man. That's like I can dig this out, and maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe there's some Christian out there who's real mad about it, and that's fucking it's call in. But like the thing that I can't get past here is that like everybody's going to die, but those who believe in Jesus will be protected by his blood and have life everlasting. And that's the message. And so in order to convey that message in a really interesting and poetic way, I'm going to kill a bunch of innocent children, except for the ones that smear lamb's blood on their door and perform a blood magic ritual that anybody else would call pagan witchcraft. Those kids will be saved and not be murdered. They will eventually die, but not right now. And that means that this is the beautiful poetry of this reality that we live in, is that now today, thousands of years later, we can reinterpret this and find some deep meaning in it. But for those innocent children who had no control over the slaves of Egypt and were just literally children, those kids, fuck them, because they should have known before they were born there. That's their fault. Like, I don't get any part of this, dude. It just sounds like a fucking horrific God. I'm glad you don't want to get into the morality of your God because it's not good. But like, I hope you do someday. And even if I take the morality of your God out of the situation, the morality of this prophecy and the concept of this prophecy existing and the fact that it just makes sense that some kids had to die so that we had good poetry for later just doesn't do it for me. And I don't want this God in my life, and I don't like it.
Well, I understand your point, and it's hard to answer, but there's a whole bunch of prophecies that I have to make sense of. The very first one is Genesis chapter 3. This is a very clear prophecy.
You don't have to make sense of them. You can just take them for what they are and realize there's no reason to believe anything. And even if these prophecies were things that you could say were fulfilled, that's not a reason to believe in a God, and that certainly doesn't abolish or admonish or absolve your God of his moral responsibilities. Like, you don't have to do this, man. You don't.
And so we don't waste more time.
I don't have to do it, but go ahead.
Real quick, because I am going to try to get ahead of you real quick, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I keep hearing over and over again is this part of the book says this, and then it comes true over in this part. Even though I understand there are different books all put together in one, you're saying this story happens over here, and then here's another one that lines up with it over here. But it's still all within this same canon, if you will. It's within this same book. Literal book. I can go grab my Bible from the other room and show you where it's all in the same book. And to me, that is not a compelling reason to believe at all. And so I think now where I'm trying to move us to in this conversation is, are there reasons outside of the Bible that you believe in a God?
Natural theology.
What is that?
Natural theology? It's basically philosophy. It's how you can know God through the things that exist, like consciousness and existence, morality, design, aesthetics. I believe all of those.
How do those prove a God?
I don't know if you can say they prove a God or not, but they certainly lend for a support for justification to believe in a God, because it takes all of those things and it explains all of those things in one thing, that there's a God who created us, existence? Why is there something rather than nothing? Morality, beauty, and design that we see. It all just is explained. All of that is explained in one simple concept of a creator. My biggest thing about natural.
Sorry. And this is exactly what we just talked about with Imperius on the last call, is that like this is the best explanatory thing. We can explain everything if we just say there's this fucking guy who wanted it to be that way and made it that way. And that's great, dude. But
I could also say that there's a 16-year-old kid sitting in his mom's basement on a computer that like programmed this simulation and decided all of those things. You know, like we could say we could come up with all kinds of theories. So again, and some of the stuff you said I can't even agree with, like beauty and design. There are some beautiful things about nature, but there's also some really awful, horrific things. Obviously, both of those, awful and something being beautiful, are also very subjective things. So even as humans, like when we find flowers and things like that generally aesthetically pleasing, it's not because those things are objectively pleasing. It's just that that's how our brains work now, because that's what we're used to and that's what we have, because we don't know anything else, because we don't live. This is where we live. This is what we've got. So none of that to me points to a God. So again, where are we going with it? Like, why do we believe this? You know,
the biggest one for me is why there's something rather than nothing. I can't. It's not that I can't understand. I want to assert it's impossible for there not to be a beginning, because you run into this. And I've called before and talked to is it Adrian?
Does God need a beginning?
About no.
So then why are we special? Why does the God need a beginning, but then you can't fathom a universe without a beginning? Why can you fathom one without a beginning and not the other?
Because there has to be a logical beginning. There has to be a first cause.
But then why can't the universe have just always existed, just like you're going to claim God has?
Yeah, because there's two reasons. One is the universe is physical, and there's this causality. One thing happens, and another thing happens because of the first thing happens, and you have this infinite regressive temporal cause and effect. And if there's not a first cause and effect, then an infinite number of causes. There's always one prior. You could never get to today, or you could never get to this moment, or whatever time unit you want to specify. So there has to be one uncaused cause, and that cause can't have had a cause because of infinite regress.
How do you know, Anthony? How do you know that there isn't another cause before God, and that's the uncaused cause? That there was something uncaused that made God, so that God could make the world, and that God actually does have a cause, just like Eru Iluvatar, who was the first thing that had no cause, and he created the Valar, and then the Maiar, and then they sang the world into existence.
They sang the kid in the mom's basement into existence, who then created this universe where he put in the Bible. He programmed us to have the Bible. He programmed us to think that the Christian God exists. All of that. Precisely. So how do we know that's not true then?
Taken by itself, I don't. But when I say, you know what, I believe that there needs to be an uncaused cause. Otherwise, infinite regress makes it's absurd to even think of that we can even reach today.
It doesn't have to be infinite.
Okay, but that doesn't answer Forrest's question. Forrest was asking you then, what is to stop there from being 1,000 million gods before the one that you're believing in?
Well, because I see no other evidence or no other reason to believe in anything other than the Christian God, because of the prophecies and the types and shadows that I explained earlier.
Again, how do you know there's not a kid? How do you know there's not a kid in the basement programming a computer game to make you think that, to have this Bible exist, and that's actually God?
Because I think that's absurd.
And there it is.
Is that a good argument, Anthony?
You just have it. You just believe it because you believe it because you believe it. At the end of the day, you've decided that this thing is true, and it doesn't fucking matter. There's no logical argument here. There's no because here's the thing, dude, is that like I don't know where the fuck the universe came from. So you know what I say about it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that the logical regress thing is a problem for me. I don't know. And I want to know, but I don't. Right. I don't know. And what you're saying is not just that you do know, but it was a guy. And you know the guy's name, and you know what the guy likes, and you know what the guy wants, and you know how you're supposed to have sex because of what the guy said, and you know what you're supposed to eat because of what the guy said, and the guy told you not to wear mixed fabrics or to cut the sides of your hair and beard. But he didn't mean it. But like he did mean it when he said don't be gay, I guess. I don't know. Like just this you're taking all this shit that's just you want to believe this.
That's irrelevant. I have not said anything about that. What I'm saying is
you keep saying the Christian God. You keep saying it's only the Christian God that makes sense. And the Christian God specifically is a lunatic.
You asked me why it can't be some 16-year-old in the basement, and that's a ludicrous answer to a real issue of the nature of the universe.
No, it's fucking
why is it ludicrous?
It's
because
not.
I
Your
think,
example,
but Anthony,
your
it's not ludicrous because I think yours is absurd. So Anthony, Anthony, I'm going to mute you because you're just interrupting us. So Anthony, let me just make this clear. I think that your assertion of a God is absurd. I think your explanation for the universe being this specific God is absurd. I don't need to bring that up in an argument because to me it's not really relevant, but you're now bringing it up. You're saying that you think my potential idea here that I'm throwing out and saying, why couldn't it be this then? You're saying that's absurd. So now here we can cancel each other out. We both think each other's things that we presented is absurd. So how do we determine what is true?
Think about
trying to
unmute.
Were you listening to me?
Am I muted or I'm sorry?
What did I just ask?
You asked me how we would know what's true between a 16-year-old
right, because if you and I both, if you and I, no, not between those. If I presented an idea, you think it's absurd, and you presented an idea that I think is absurd. How do we determine which is true?
We would have to, if we cared about it, we would have to discuss each position and find out why you would think one way or versus the other. You would have to discuss it out more. Why do you think
is there an alternative besides my idea and your idea? Is perhaps the idea that we don't know a possibility?
Well, it is for some, I suppose. I mean,
for honest,
something either is or isn't. So is it possible that we don't know why the universe is?
I think that you can hold out on believing why it is, but other people can actually come to some faith in something for why it is.
What would be a good reason to believe that we've? What would be a good reason to believe that we've figured it out and that we know for sure where the universe came from?
I first think it's almost axiomatic, if you ask me, that the universe had a beginning and God caused it. I don't see how you can.
I'm not interested in it. If this is if we're doing the precept special pleading, and we've been on this call for 33 minutes, so.
What's frustrating to me, Anthony, is that like you're trying to hand wave this away by saying, well, Promise's idea that we're in a computer simulation, that's just absurd. But a minute ago, when we asked you, what if it's just a different God? You wouldn't even fucking entertain the idea. You have this idea that it's this guy, and you know the guy, and it's this specific guy. And we're like, what if it's a different guy? And you're like, totally impossible. And then what if it's some other equally silly thing? That's absurd. That's crazy. And you keep coming back to this thing as if the guy you like is literally the only logical explanation. And all the baggage that comes with Christianity is just part and parcel. It just has to be there. It's just an assumption that must be made because it's the most convenient one for you. And it's just not worth anybody's time to sit here and like try to have you preach at us when you can't even be honest about the fact that you just don't know a thing.
The problem with that, what you just said, Forrest, is that you said, well, why can't it be this other God? Well, okay, I'll give that to you. It can be. It could very well be that God. What evidence do you have for that? I've laid out my evidence for why I believe in what I believe. But
I have
you didn't,
exactly.
You didn't lay out any evidence. You laid out no evidence for that other supposed God. So if you want to compete
I'm answering
in the realm of ideas, you got to provide evidence.
I'm answering you. I have exactly as much and the exact same caliber of evidence as you do, which is jack shit and prophecies written in a book.
Well, so Anthony, I'll tell you my explanation for the universe.
That's your
opinion. Would you like to know? Would you like to know?
I would. Sure.
I don't know.
I'll listen.
I don't know.
Okay.
My answer is I do not know. Do I need evidence for you to believe that I don't know?
I predicted that. I didn't have time to write it down, though. Like Forrest predicted some guy's statement the other day on one of his shows. I predicted you were going to say that.
Well, because she's honest.
It's my honest answer.
It's not
so
major predictive power for somebody.
Right. It's not an interesting answer. Well, I think it's the honest answer, which is that we don't know. I think it would be cool to find out someday. Maybe. I don't know. I'm okay to not know.
That's and I know you're fine that that's okay for you, and I'm fine if that's okay.
I don't have a
too.
choice.
But
I don't have a choice to be fine with it or not. If I'm facing reality, if I care about what's true, and if I don't want to believe things without having a good reason for believing them, then I have to be okay with facing the fact that I don't know. And I was terrified to face that when I was a believer. I was so terrified to face the phrase, I do not know. I did not want to let go of these comforting lies that I held on to make me think, well, there has to be this afterlife, there has to be this God, because otherwise everything else in my life is going to unravel. Guess what? Once I was able to be honest and say I don't know, suddenly life actually got easier because I was being honest and consistent with my values. I don't feel that you're being honest here because you haven't presented us with anything substantial to change our minds and cause us to believe, other than you're saying, well, that sounds absurd to me.
We can't go through literally almost hundreds of prophecies and types and shadows. I can't do that on this show with you. I wouldn't
care if you did, Anthony, because I already did that myself. I was in ministry school studying the Bible, studying the prophecies, when I realized it was bullshit. It's like sitting there studying Harry Potter and being shocked when this part of the story then happens over here. It's not what you're asserting that it is.
The Bible is not written like Harry Potter by one author. It's written by many authors.
No, you're correct. It's significantly worse.
Well, it's like Nancy Drew then. So we have all these different books and they say that it's one author, God, or what's her name? I can't remember the main author, but it's actually written by all these different contributing authors. That makes it even less interesting. So we've reached a point in the conversation where nothing has happened other than getting to precepts and then saying things are absurd. And we have other theists on the line. So unless Forrest is interested in continuing the call, I think this is where we leave it and say, yeah, thank you for the call, but we didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, I've learned nothing new in 37 minutes. I'm done.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Anthony, for calling. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you too.
Yeah, the prophecy one is just not.
It doesn't do anything.
It reminds me of, I call it like spiritual LARPing, like where Christians get so into this story. You know what I mean? It's like, what if you guys could just like have a Bible convention where you get just to like talk about this stuff and pretend it's real? Would that be enough for you? And then come back to reality after that. Like go enjoy that for like a weekend every year and then come back to reality, because it's the same. Like to me, it just screams the same thing once you're on the outside of it. I get it. And I feel bad because I understand what it's like to be in it and you fully feel like it's real. But then when you try to get to the heart of it, there's nothing.
There's nothing. There's nothing. And that's what gets me is like this idea that like, yeah, well, there's these prophecies and they're not very good prophecies, but they are certainly prophecies. And like, whether or not you look at it's all pointing towards this God. How do you know it's that God? Well, because it just is. Right. Well, how do you know it's not some other God? Well, because it just isn't.
Because
it's like,
that's
okay, well,
absurd.
there's no prophecy part to that. That's just what you want. That's just what you like. And like, if your whole argument comes down to just like, I want this to be true, therefore it must be, then I'm sorry, it's just not worth anybody's
Yeah.
time to hear it. And you're
Yeah,
going to
I
demand
agree.
evidence of me when I'm like, yeah, but there's some other fucking guy. They're like, well, how do you know that? What if I had a book that said
As
he was
much
real?
as you know. Right, exactly.
Yeah, Jack and shit.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, man. It's just not, I don't know.
Very, very lame. Do you see a call that is speaking to you? I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them, but stay on the line if you're on there, just so we can see, because some of these we might get through quickly. But
I'm interested in line 24 personally, and also kind of line 8.
Great. Yeah. Let's go.
But I'm also a petulant little shit, so maybe you don't want to do that one. Who knows?
I'm excited. It'll keep me awake, I think. Let's talk to Dune. Hey, Dune, you are live with Promise and Forrest.
Hello, I'm audible.
Hello.
Hello.
Yep, you're on with us. So, what did you want to talk to us about today?
Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Hello.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. English is my fourth language. If I have a problem in speaking English, so please forgive me.
All good. Well, let's all go slow, and that'll help a lot.
Okay. Actually, atheism is false because I try to live on a atheism. Like it led to nihilism, and I see many of the atheists, but they don't live in nihilism. They have a hope for the life. So I find this both of the contradiction. That's why
let's pause real quick. What do you? Let's pause. Atheism is false is an interesting statement to me because it makes me think you don't know what atheism is. What do you think an atheist is?
I know what is atheism is.
Right, I'm asking you because I'm unclear that.
Hello.
What is an atheist?
An atheist is someone doesn't believe in God or like God in any type of like only believe in material thing.
Right. So I don't believe in a God. That's not.
So you are
that is true. It is true that I'm an atheist. Yes, you're calling an atheist call-in show. So I don't believe that a God exists. That is true. So you can't say that my atheism is false. I would have to believe in a God for my atheism to be false. I don't believe in any gods, and that is true.
My current position is agnostic. From scale of 1 to 7, I am currently on 4.
Are you there, Dune?
Hello.
I think he was speaking to somebody else there. Yeah.
Hello.
I also, did I hear you properly? I'm sorry. Go ahead and respond to what Promise just told you, and then I have a different question.
You are audible. You are audible to me properly, but I think I have some problem. Hello.
Hello. We can hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
We're having audio issues. We might need to move on.
I am on a scale from 1 to 7 on on atheism.
Can you hear us?
Yes. I am. You are audible to me, sir.
Okay. So, do you understand what Promise just said? That she truly does not believe that a God is real. Therefore, her atheism is not false. She is an atheist.
Okay. From 1 to 7, the Dawkins scale from 1 to 7, I am on current position is 4.
Okay. I'm just
going to tell you again. This is where I stand. Not a number. I do not believe that any gods exist. 100% do not believe that any gods exist.
Why I try to put a number on that? Because earlier on the guy Anthony, you called him. You say you don't know how the universe come. We as a human race only know about 5% of the universe. We don't know the universe completely. So we can't come in a conclusion perfectly that something is not there. That's why atheism is false. It's pretty much logical.
So I just want to be clear. You said you on the Dawkins scale, which I just looked up because I've heard of that before, but I didn't know it. But Dawkins scale is this kind of like ranking scale of how strongly you do or do not believe in a God. And you said that you're a number 4. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, so number 4 is listed as completely impartial, exactly 50%, God's existence or non-existence are equally equiprobable. So there's equal
Yes, sir.
chance that God does or does not exist.
Because I don't know the whole universe. I only know what like 5%. Most cosmologists only know 5%. I only know 2% or
Sure.
1%, or either like zero in decimals. So how could be so sure
Okay.
to tell someone atheism is true or someone's
So
position is false?
I would say that I, on
Hmm.
this scale,
Hmm.
am a number
Hmm.
6.
Okay,
De
okay.
facto atheist, very low probability, but short of 0. I don't know for
Okay.
certain, but I think God is very improbable. I live my life on
Hmm.
the assumption that he is not there. That is not a
Okay.
7, which is to say that for
Hmm.
sure I know there is no God, because I agree with you. To say that I
Hmm.
know for sure there is no God, that would require evidence. And it would also
Okay.
require evidence to say that I know there is a God, or that I even slightly believe that there is a God. I'm saying that I don't have any evidence for any gods, so I'm going to live my life as if there are not and assume that there are not until some evidence comes along. Is that fair
Okay.
to you?
Okay, okay. If at the end of the day, when you like, I don't assure that you wanna die one day or something. I don't. You live forever, but one day you wanna die. You have 5 days or 6 days to left to die. I'm sorry for that, but in that you find compelling evidence that God exists. What will you do? Will you change your mind or that path?
I'm
Dune,
sorry.
where you cut out.
It
Okay.
sounded
Hello.
like what you were saying is that if I were to come to the end of my life and know that I have only a few
Oh,
days to live, would I change my mind? Is that what you were asking?
yeah. You find a compelling evidence for that, like out of fear, out of
No.
something like Christopher Hitchens' last moment, thinking about.
Yeah, so Christopher Hitchens said before he died that
Mm,
if in his last moments, through pain or fear,
mm,
he was compelled to say that there is a
mm,
God, he hopes that
mm.
everyone will ignore it because he knows so
Okay.
well that there's no reason to believe that. And I would say the same
And
But
thing.
and
I
Dune, I
have
okay.
been
can
afraid for my life. I have been afraid for my life, and I did not call out to a God, nor change my belief, nor even think about a God in that moment. I tried to do what I could to make sure I stayed alive. And so even when that was just keeping myself calm if I was not in control of the situation. So that's I have been in situations where I was very scared and worried about death, and I have not been compelled to believe in a God in that moment. Who knows what'll happen later? But if that does happen, that's still not a good reason to believe.
exactly. Yeah.
But
People
like
that
I,
people's
ma'am,
emotions
I'm sorry.
when they're dying doesn't indicate whether something is true or not. Are you there, Dune?
Hello, I'm there. Hello.
Yeah. So does this make sense what we're saying?
Yeah, you are worth it to like you have a good answer. Like you still believe in cognitive faculties right now or not?
Like, do I believe in my cognitive faculties at this moment, or just
Yes.
in like when I'm dying, or when?
Yeah. No, no. Current time. That's present time. Like in my country,
I'm
it's 8 seconds.
forced to. It's all the
You
information that I have.
okay, okay. And the end of time, like 5 days before you die, you have the still same information what you have today, but you get out of in fear you appeal
Presumably.
to God. Yeah, presumably. So, like our emotions is we don't know why our emotions kind of behave in that way. We find hope, but hope is a delusion. We find love is also a delusion. We find like empathy, everything is out of evolutionary process. We have built this delusion, and we still believe in those delusions. But like if
So
some
those
guys from like Saudi Arabia or America, he believe in certain religion. We assume that he is false. Like he also makes some delusions. I'm just trying to understand you how you like differentiate between different delusions of the people.
I would argue that, like,
Mm.
if I took a very like cosmic and existential nihilistic approach, which I do because this is
Yeah.
my philosophy, and say that
Okay.
like things like, law, order, justice, all these things are illusions that we use to prop up society,
Mm.
which is also fundamentally not real. It's just the thing that we're doing. Like, I can do that. As far as like love, that's a chemical reaction in my brain. That's physical
Yeah.
process producing an emotion. I would not call that an illusion or a delusion. I would say that it doesn't fundamentally matter, because I don't think anything fundamentally matters, but that I wouldn't call it a delusion. I would say it's delusional to say that I have this strong emotion, therefore there must be some truth to the universe that is reflective of that emotion, which is what a lot of creationist or theistic arguments are, is that like, I have these feelings when praying, so therefore I know God is real, or I know what morality is, or what love is, and that tells me what God is. That's an issue for me. But just to say I know that love exists because I feel it, I don't think that's delusional or problematic.
No, it's delusion. We can see it is delusion because as you say,
because why?
Progeny, for like taking some friend for granted. Like, I love my mother because she provides me food. I love my father because it helps me to go through my education and all that.
Oh, no. I love people because there's an electrochemical reaction in my brain that is releasing the right chemicals to make me feel love. It just so happens that my wife is the person who elicits that reaction. She causes that chemical reaction, therefore I love her. I can point to certain things that she is or does that make me feel that way, but at the end of the day, that would be a purely emotional thing. The physical chemical reaction still physically exists, and therefore I wouldn't call that illusion. I would call, like, say, for example, justice an illusion. There's no substance to justice. It's just something that we prefer as a species.
You heard of Yuval Noah Harari?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Hello? He's a great like novelist. What is the famous book is that, like, he's the kind of something Vipassana meditation he used to practice, and he said that love is a delusion because we are not ought to do something, like it's in imbalances, but many of the people have no love in their life. Like, many of the people still exist which doesn't experience love, doesn't experience many things, but we say that it's a good thing or bad thing, but that is nothing to say it's good or bad. That's why it's delusion. Like, say something like the rose is very beautiful, but it's not beautiful. You just look in something subjective.
So that's fine, but I am curious to know, like, it sounds like we have a disagreement on philosophy rather than reality here. So, like, let's say I agree with you and say that everything about this is delusion. I'll just, for the sake of the argument, I'll just say I agree.
Yeah.
How does that then get us to the belief in a God?
No, I'm not saying that. Don't know anything for certain. Every stance is false. I'm for here. Like, I don't. That's why I'm on 50-50. I don't know anything. It's kind of like the best position of Richard Feynman. I don't know anything.
So then you're agnostic.
Claim someone is false. Like you say in your latest call, the guy Anthony guy, you try to shatter his worldview. But I'm here for, that's why I put atheism is false, because you try to prove someone's position is false. So I am here like trying to say there is nothing true and false, but we still try to do someone's making a little false or true.
That's fine, but Promise and I have both. But Promise and I have both been very clear that our position is the null hypothesis. So, like, we're not making a positive claim. That we're not making a positive claim that there is no such thing as a God.
No.
We're saying we don't have any reason to believe it, so we don't. And what you're saying is that you're giving it an equal 50-50 chance, which I think takes a lot more faith than our position does.
No, you have faith, bro. You don't know.
No.
The man.
What faith do I have?
But you still have the position of.
Dune, can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
Hello.
Hey,
hello.
Sorry, you've drifted off again. Can you please? I don't know what. There's a bad connection. What faith
I want to
do you
make
think I have?
Ma'am is saying something. Yes, ma'am. Can you go?
You go ahead. I'd love for you to answer his question. What faith do you think that we have?
You have a faith that every other, like your faith is correct. Everyone others faith, like in Muslims, Jews, Christians, and any other faith who believe in a supernatural claim is like absurd. You say it's absurd to believe in God, but I am here to say every position you take from 1 to 7, it's equally absurd.
Dune, I don't have faith about any of that. That's just my opinion because
You
I
have
don't
faith,
think
ma'am.
there's a
You
good
have faith.
reason.
You have faith,
Nope.
ma'am.
So I'm in the
Ma'am,
middle
you
of
have
talking.
faith.
I'm in the middle of
Okay,
talking.
sorry.
So
Sorry.
I don't have faith in that. I just personally, as Forrest just pointed out, it's an opinion. I don't find it to be convincing. Therefore, I don't believe it.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay.
believe that any gods exist. And I don't think we can know if any gods exist. I don't know, but I also don't believe. Same as, like, do you think that I have faith that what's something absurd that Santa Claus doesn't
Bigfoot?
exist? Yeah, Bigfoot. Do you think I
Ma'am,
have faith that
that's a police
Bigfoot doesn't
argument, ma'am.
exist?
Santa Claus is a police argument. Try to be so real, ma'am. It's not
No,
you're talking
I
to
am
some
being
5 year,
really
7
for
year,
real.
12 years
I'm
old.
being super for real. Do you think that I have
Okay.
faith that Bigfoot doesn't exist?
You have faith? No, I'm what I'm trying to say. Just listen. Okay.
No. That was a yes or
Please
no
listen.
question. Do you think it takes faith to not believe that Bigfoot exists?
Yes, you used to take faith that God does not exist or exist.
I'm
Okay, then
unclear
I
on what
think
you
you
were saying. 'Cause
fundamentally. It
Hello.
sounded like you
We
said
don't
yes,
know.
and in that case,
I'm on that position. We don't know that Bigfoot either exists or not exists.
right. So does it take faith to
you
not believe it?
Yeah, it's take a faith either to believe Bigfoot exists or not exist, or I don't know.
See, that's the thing.
I'm not talking
don't
about
know anything
knowledge.
for certain,
I'm not
though.
talking about knowledge. I'm talking about belief.
Okay.
I'm not asking if you know if Bigfoot exists. Do you believe that Bigfoot
Ma'am?
exists?
I believe that Bigfoot exists.
You do?
No, ma'am, Bigfoot doesn't exist. Hello, Bigfoot doesn't exist, ma'am, for me.
You don't believe that.
Okay, so is that a faith position? No, I'm trying to get, because like you keep saying that this takes faith. I agree.
Yeah, it's a faith position because I don't have
faith.
compelling studies for that. I don't do
Dune,
any personal compelling studies for that. Yeah, that's why.
Dune, I think you fundamentally, I think you misunderstood. I think that where the misunderstanding here is that you are misunderstanding the phrase "I don't know" with the phrase "this does not exist," and like not believing in something and saying that something absolutely, definitely does not exist are different claims. So for Bigfoot or for God, I'm not saying I know for sure this thing isn't real. I'm saying I have no reason to believe that it is. So until I have a reason, I'm going to just move on with my life as if it isn't. That's the same way that you behave with literally everything. There's a reason why you don't believe. Pick any magical monster from around the world. You don't believe it exists, not because you know for sure, but because you maybe have never even heard of it before, and there's no reason for you to believe it. And we feel the same way about God, which is just that I have no way to say that it isn't real. That doesn't make any sense. But there's no reason to think that it is. So until we have a good reason, we are level 6 atheists, not level 7 atheists. And that's the most honest position to be in.
For you, because you think it's correct.
No, because
it's not
we
that it's
don't think
correct.
there's
It's that
an
it's honest.
alternative.
No. Like some atheists are on 7 position. They are wrong.
Some atheists are on the 7th position, and I think that they are making a leap of faith. Yes, I think that you would need to have compelling evidence that something doesn't exist
What about 5?
to say that it doesn't exist.
What about 5, sir? Sir, what about 5?
What about what?
What about the position number 5?
Position number 5 is fine. My issue is anything that is lower than position 6 or above position 6, I think requires some sort of evidence. Because if you have, like I said, anything at all, if you believe in, if I give you any name of a Loch Ness monster or aliens or the Santa Claus or whatever, for you to say number 7, that does not exist, that requires evidence. For you to say number 1, that does exist, that also requires evidence. For you to say number 2 or number 3, saying there's some probability that this exists, that requires evidence. For you to take the number 4 position, as you do, and say there's an equal probability, you need to then demonstrate that there is any probability, which requires evidence. All Promise and I are saying is sitting on number 6, saying there's no evidence for or against this. There's no good reason to believe this. And there's a lot of reason to not believe it, so I'm just not going to. And if somebody comes along and proves this God is real, I'll be the first one to say that he is. I will still say he's an asshole, but I will say that he's real because that's the most honest position. Number 6 is the scientific position. It is the position of null hypothesis. Until I have a reason to move forward with this hypothesis, I'm going to consider it nothing.
Okay. Sir, I want to as first time when I come to call, I made an argument that about whole universe, only 5% the top astronomists or cosmologists know. I think I don't have clears on that. But we know for certain, I know for my knowledge, I have 0.99% of knowledge what is in the universe, how universe behave, what's going on. I don't know math, I don't know quantum physics, I don't know quantum mechanics, I don't know anything, but I just heard of from like Scientific American and different magazines or my school textbook. But I don't know how the origin of life came from non-life to life. Still, I don't know. I don't know the Miller-Urey experiment. I don't completely understand it. So I don't come to any conclusion on that it's going to be in certain way. For me, I have only 1% of knowledge. I don't think any one of us from all around the world, if someone have knowledge of 5% only, we don't have audacity to claim that we know 100%, and no one's worldview is exactly correct. That's my position
Dune,
is correct because I found this evidence.
This is where and I think this is where we should end the conversation. But I think where we're getting hung up here is you're talking about knowledge, and Forrest and I are not claiming to have that about a God. We're talking about belief.
But
we don't believe any gods exist. We're not claiming to have any knowledge.
You are correct. You don't have any knowledge, but you still have. You think that you have still knowledge that you can shatter someone else's worldview. The Anthony guy.
Yes, because somebody
don't believe in God because you have knowledge.
When you get really specific about certain claims, then I can get specific with exactly how much we can say that we can look at something and say, hey, like we know about these prophecies that they're not helpful because they're not actually prophecies when it's just talking about one thing in the beginning of the book and talking about another. So that there are things that we can know. So the more specific somebody gets with a God claim, the higher up I'm going to go on that scale.
You know Miller-Urey experiment? Have you heard of? Hello?
Yes.
What?
Miller-Urey experiment.
Urey-Miller experiment. Yeah, I know it very well.
You know very well. How many amino acids we created?
I think so, Dune. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're getting close to the end of the show, and we have a few more callers. So, Dune, we're getting close to the end of the show, and we have a few more callers that have been waiting. And I think that we keep going.
Thank you so much for listening to me.
I was gonna, of course, I was just gonna wrap it with this. I think if you want to call back sometime with one of those other, I'm in the middle of talking. I'm just gonna mute you for a second. Oh, did he hang up?
Yeah, I guess he did. I think he heard you say he was rapping and he just kind of bounced.
Okay. Well, I was trying to say, like, that's totally fine. I'm not trying to completely cut him off. But as far as the issue that he called in, the original argument of, like, atheism is false, I wouldn't say theism is false. If somebody is positioning themselves as somebody that believes in a God, I'm not going to say, you're not actually a theist. I believe you when you say that. If you say that, I think what he's trying to say is more about knowledge, and that's cool. We're not claiming to know. So now what? It takes stuff to say we know. Anyways, okay. We've got a few calls left. I'm losing my voice, so we'll see how these go. Do you wanna talk to Jane first, or do you want to save that call for last? Okay,
let's get through Jane.
Then I can rest my voice.
That's fine.
Okay, cool. Hey Jane, you are live with Promise and Forrest. How are you? Oh,
hello.
Did we lose the call?
Oh, come on. Jane was waiting for 2 hours.
Oh no. Where did it?
Maybe when we picked up, it did something for her. Maybe she touched her phone weird.
Yeah, I think she might have
up for Jane.
Open herself up. I can open up one line for Jane. Jane, put in the auto screener, put in your name the same as Jane. If anyone else calls in, I'm dropping you immediately. I don't even want to have Steph come back in. So one line open for Jane.
Okay, because I wanted to talk to her. She's waiting for 2 hours, and I'm sure it was interesting. We'll give Jane a few seconds here. I see somebody already initializing a call. 5 people who have been blocked have tried to call in today. And 311 people got a busy signal trying to call in because we were just taking so many calls all at once. Good numbers. I'm going to give it like 5 seconds. I know dead air sucks, but I was going to give it a couple seconds.
We might need to take another call.
We have 2 calls initializing. One of you isn't supposed to be here. One or both of you is not supposed to be here. Let's take. Well, I guess we can go ahead and do one more while this is processing.
Okay, cool. I guess let's talk to Nasser.
Yeah. Nasser, hey, Nasser, you were on last time I was on.
Oh, yes, I was. Hello, Nasser. Hello, Promise. Well, dang, I kind of feel bad for taking the reins away from James, but I hope we can have a good conversation so that she can come back.
Hopefully.
Well, I do kind of want to recap quickly where we left off last time because it did end abruptly. I was with you, Forrest and Seth. Do you want me to recap real quick before we jump off?
If it's necessary, I would rather just talk about what you have listed here on the call screen, which is why shouldn't I believe in a God?
Yeah, and I wasn't there for that conversation, and a lot of people are going to be listening to this that weren't listening last time, so we might just need to have like a new conversation.
No. I do want to make sure the viewers aren't in this, and I do think it's important for the conversation going forward. So what I said last time as an introduction to myself was, I'm a Muslim from the Middle East. I am young, and honestly, this is probably going to be pretty low-level stuff because I'm saying, why shouldn't I believe? Because what I said last time was, the only reason I believe in the Muslim God is because it's what I've been brought up with. But I don't actually know what's a good reason to believe in anything, and that's what I'm here to discuss. I also want to discuss evolution in the classroom because that's actually what inspired me to call here, is what occurred when we were finally taught evolution in the classroom here. With other students, I mean. I do believe in evolution, by the way. And yeah, that's where I want to jump off. So you guys can take it from there. What do you want to ask so we can move on with this conversation here?
Go, Promise.
Sure. Okay. I'm trying to.
I'm just kind of here.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow that. So you're saying, why shouldn't you believe in a God? I don't know. I don't understand why we're going with that question, because in that case, why shouldn't you believe an infinite amount of other options of other things that you haven't even thought of? So to me, a better question is, why should you? Like, I'm not asking myself why. I'll use from the other call, why shouldn't I believe in Bigfoot? In that case, why shouldn't I just believe every single thing ever presented to me? Is that a good way to live? Not really. That's not going to help me in life. So instead, I like to ask, why should I believe this? So especially when it's a really big claim like this. So why should I believe in a God? Why aren't we starting there?
I do agree with your line of reasoning. And Seth did actually say something similar last time. He said, it's so frustrating that you are, it's refreshing that you're here, but it's frustrating that you're not actually just taking one step further and saying, if I don't actually have a good reason, and if I'm not asking it the way that you said, Promise, then why don't I just not believe? And the only reason I could come up for that is, well, again, it's the reason I've been brought up here. And if I were to make the choice to identify with the atheism model of just not believing and doing that, it's more than just relinquishing the belief, right? There's ramifications there. There is loss of identity, community, stuff like that. It's a little more complicated than that. And while I do 100% see the line of reasoning there, I feel like, you might understand why it's not so simple, right?
That's what we call the argument from adverse consequence. It's if I believe this thing is true, then there's a bad reason. And that's not a good reason to not believe a thing or to believe a thing.
Well, I think
it's not a good
reason. These are two separate things. And I talk to people about this a lot, Nasser, and I appreciate your honesty in this. I think the issue here is we're looking at belief as though it's a choice, and it's really not, because I have a feeling that you either are convinced of this or you're not. Now, whether you choose to be honest about that is up to you. And I also want to point this out. You don't owe anybody that answer. If it's going to make you unsafe to tell people your position of belief, I would advise that you not do that. I think it's, in some cases, it can be a privilege to be able to say, yeah, I don't believe this, because you're absolutely right. There are cultural ramifications, there are safety, especially if you said you're young, if you're still living at home. I would advise heavily against sharing that information. So let's focus on
I
figuring
do
out
agree.
if you have a good reason for believing this or not if you have a good reason for being honest with people in your life about it, because I don't think there's morality attached to that. I think
agree.
that's to figure out. So I'd rather figure out, if you have a good reason to believe this. It sounds to me like you're doubting that you do have a good reason to believe it. Is that kind of where you're at right
I don't
now?
have it. Yes, but I do want to compare it with other things that I believe. For example, like I said before, I believe in evolution. I believe in a lot of things in science, and I believe in a million other things. And I wanted to draw a parallel. So let's say I do believe in Islam, but I'm only believing it because of the community stuff. I believe in evolution, but it's not because of that. I believe in evolution. Well, I do want to talk about it, actually. I think if you guys would think it productive, I want to discuss why I believe in evolution and draw parallels from there, and also compare it to why Forrest would believe in evolution, because obviously Forrest is a professional here. He's an evolutionary biologist, as far as I know, and he would have better reasons than me, I would say. Would you guys think that would be a productive way to draw parallel into why should we believe what we believe here?
I mean, as long as we can be general about it, we don't have to actually dig into the fossil record and everything, unless you want to. But
No,
I think if
I
we
don't
keep
think we
it
have to do that now.
we're toward the end of the show, but here's my main thing, though, because I think we can get to this point even faster. Do you care
Sure.
if what you believe in general, do you care if things that you believe are true or not?
Yes, I do.
Great. That's a really good value
That's
to
why I'm here.
hold. So then I think that you take it from there. And so, how do you determine if something is true or not? And I guess that's what you're getting to. You've determined that evolution is true. Would that be accurate? Right. So for me, I'm not going to believe something unless I have a good reason to believe it's true. So I think this can be so simple. If you don't have a good reason to believe in a God, because you have found good reasons to believe evolution, if we're going to phrase it that way, but you haven't found good reasons to believe a God exists. So it's a great idea to not believe it then.
Mm-hmm. So I assume there's a bit of a time crunch here. I might call in next week to discuss more of the details, but I agree with you in the premise of what you're saying, Promise. Forrest, what he said last week was the answer is always going to be evidence for what's a good reason to believe. And even though he's not a physicist, he can still believe in things related to physics, such as the theories and laws in physics, because there is evidence. But in my view, I don't think I actually have a good reason to believe in evolution either. I mean, I can explain it. I can explain why I believe in evolution, but I think Forrest, out of everyone here, has the best reasons to believe in evolution, simply because he knows off the evidence. He can explain it. He can even find it out from himself from scratch. I mean, I could possibly do that if he gave me 300 years.
Yep. You still have good reasons to believe in evolution, right? If we're working on the word belief here, just fine. You still have good reasons because it still affects your life every day. And the fact that evolution works is why biomedical sciences as a whole work. It's why agriculture works. It's why forensics works. It's why there's so many things that work because evolution works. And so even if you don't know the data, even if you have not gone to school to learn about it, it still benefits you, it still affects you, and you can still learn enough the basics to understand it in a rudimentary and fundamental way. That's all fine. So the problem is when I talked about that stuff, it's just a recap. Yeah, I'm not a physicist, but I know enough about the Big Bang to talk about. But you can take something I'm even less educated on. I don't know jack shit about how computers work, man. I don't know anything about computers. Jimmy Snow makes fun of me regularly for not knowing anything about computers at all, even the most basic stuff. I know what a capacitor is, zero clue why they're there. I know what they are and what they do, don't know what it's all about. I can't talk, you know what I mean? And so stuff like that, I got nothing. But it's here doing the job in front of me. It's the reason why I'm able to talk to you at this moment is because my computer is running. And so even if I have zero concept, zero understanding, I can at least benefit from like understanding that this thing exists and is currently functioning in a way that works for me. And that's all I really need. You can't do even that with your God, because at the end of the day, you have no demonstration of this God that other people can't demonstrate, and it means the same nothing for all their own gods. This God doesn't make any novel, testable predictions. I don't know how my computer works, but if it works, I should be able to click the little blue W icon here and it'll open up Microsoft Word. And indeed it does every time. And so I know that the thing works. If God is real, I should be able to say, if I do X, then Y will happen every time. And there isn't a single thing like that with God, except you can say, if I pray, I will be disappointed. And then you'll be guaranteed to have that outcome. But like, beyond that, man, you got nothing for this God. You have no reason to believe in it. You have no evidence for it. You just have the comfort of the belief, and that's not a good reason to make a truth claim.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Forrest. And this is actually what's so frustrating about this whole religion thing and what I've been brought up. Because I mentioned this before, but I am probably very autistic. I have no idea how humans work and why humans behave the way they do. It's still to this degree, like to the point where I don't even know what someone means when they say, how are you to me? Because it doesn't seem like they want to answer, and I could go into that. I don't get it. Another thing I don't get is why are the people who seem so to be identified? Yes, go ahead.
And yet, you do know that humans exist because you can make novel, testable predictions about them. And there are people, I just happen to have this within arm's reach, who study them and can talk about humans in a detailed way. And like, that's great. And so you don't need to be a human biologist. You don't need to be a bioanthropologist. You don't need to be a biomedical scientist. You don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to be a primatologist. You don't need to be any of these things to be able to look around you, see humans, and know that if you do these things, then the humans will do those things. And that's great evidence that they exist. With God, you just don't have that. And so there's no reason to believe it. If you don't have any evidence for something, then there's no reason to believe the thing. Let me ask you a question, Nasser. How can you tell the difference between something that you have no evidence for and something that simply does not exist?
Well, I don't think I would, in my current state, be able to. I mean, if my current understanding of what logic is, to actually probably there's indistinguishable. If there is a method to actually knowing if something is probable at all, I think that's something that needs to be proven, if it's even possible. I don't think I'll be able to do that at this current stage in my knowledge.
I don't know of a way to do it either. I don't know of a way to do it either. If something has absolutely no evidence for its existence, I don't know how to distinguish that from something that actually just simply doesn't fucking exist. And I don't know of anybody who does. And I would be very suspicious and very distrusting of anybody who claimed to be able to do that. And so, like, that's where we're at, man, is that you have no evidence for this God, and yet you are believing it. Would you do that with absolutely anything else ever? Is there any situation ever where you would take something and say, I have exactly. So you are carving out not only a special place in your life for this God, but a special place in your brain for this God, and having a totally different kind of thinking that you would never apply anywhere else because you know how bullshit it is, and you're using it right here. And I think that you should not do that, because that is a great way to believe some silly shit.
I see what you're saying, and I have a question related to everything you just said that is going to require a little bit of a spiel about how other people behave. And like, I kind of want to take your perspective on it, as you two being atheists that have been doing this for a while, and obviously the people around me who are just Muslims, who are just Muslims, who are just Muslims. And I'm going to be honest, it's been pretty boring talking to them about why or what, or it's just been, antagonistic. So if I may go in a little spiel for a question.
Brief, the tiniest of spiels, because we are at the end of the show and we have 2 calls left. So like 30-second spiel max.
All right, let's go quickly. Sure, that's more than enough. So, I have been asking people, why do you believe this, or why is this the way it is, and whatever, and it's never been satisfactory. I've asked my mother things about Allah, and she just tells me either, hey, that's there's reasons for that, and where did I get it from? Oh, well, of course he's so nice. Of course he's this way. Of course. Or other people ask them, why do you think that evolution isn't real? Which is what happened in the classroom. Like, what? It's like, oh, but it's contradictory to other things. I'm like, well, do you think that Noah's Ark will literally happen? Some of them say yes, some of them say no. And it's like, some of them be like, I'm like, well, I want to know what motivates people to have these picky and choosy attitudes of like, oh yeah, I do believe in this. Oh yeah, God does do this for us. He does give you this mercy. He does allow you to do this. And alcohol is fine. And I don't need to pray 5 times a day. And some of them do. Some of them are like, no, you have to be strict. And it's like, everyone's got their own little thing. And sometimes it just feels like people are straight up lying to me, or they're just making shit up on the spot. And it's very frustrating. With the evolution or something, for example, everything I've learned about it, if I went out, it's fine. If I, when they told me that physics says that the acceleration of gravity on Earth is 9.8 meters per second, I never tested it, but it would be quite ridiculous if airplanes continued to fly if physicists thought otherwise. I have all this, but I've never had anything satisfying from religious people. I want to ask you, from your perspective, why is everyone just this way around
Welcome
me?
to our fucking world, Nasser.
This is welcome to why we do this. This is what we regularly face. But what you're describing, because I grew up in a very, very religious household. They're all. I'm the only one that's an atheist out of a massive family. In fact, most of them are in full-time ministry to this day. And so I understand what it's like to be surrounded by that. But that is the power of dogma. Once somebody has to believe something, whatever that reason may be, and I think that's when it comes down to that individual person. Maybe it's a fear of death. Maybe it is because they were close to a family member that believed that way, and so they have sentimental reasons. Maybe it's because they aren't educated enough when it comes to science, and they need to have an answer about the universe or things like that. People have their reasons for dogma. And when somebody has decided that they have to believe something, whether that's conscious or subconscious, they can tell all kinds of stories. They can continue to try to make this thing make sense. And that's where you get the dishonesty. And it is really, really frustrating. And if you are going to be a skeptical person, you are going to come across that the rest of your life. And so your best bet is to get really comfortable with being frustrated with people hanging on to their dogma. And that, unfortunately, is just part of life. I understand wanting to know an exact reason. Why are people like this? But that's the thing about humans. There's so many different things, and people have different reasons for why they cling to stuff. But I do think you're right that at the base of it, there is some intellectual dishonesty that they're having to cling to. And what gets me through that and helps me not be too frustrated is I hold compassion and empathy for whatever that reason is. There must be something in their life that's causing them to have to hold on so tightly. And that makes me sad for them, because that's some unresolved issue that they haven't had the courage to face yet.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good answer today. Thank you, Promise. And thank you, Forrest, as well.
Yeah, thanks for. I like these questions.
I've been taking a little bit of notes.
This call.
Yeah, I'm thinking about calling back as well, so give other people a chance. And because I feel like there's a lot more interesting things we could go. And I imagine that this is interesting for everybody to hear. I could just be a complete idiot here, and everyone in the chat is just freaking bored. Or this could be interesting for everyone. I hope it's interesting for everyone. And I want to explore more. What are the good reasons to believe? Yeah.
I think that would be a great discussion for if you want to call back and talk to me. Matt talks about belief and why to do it. Promise talks about belief and why to do it. A lot of our hosts dabble on those, but those two in particular, me, Matt, and Promise, I would recommend talking to about, because that's something that we dig into a lot. But I'm excited to see your deconstruction, my guy, because it sounds a lot like you are identifying the problems in your thinking, and they are very fucking common problems. And so it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it is something to address, because otherwise you will be taken advantage of. And we don't want that for you, man. You're too nice of a guy. So do call us back sometime. We'll talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody in the chat is saying call back sometime. And I'd love for you to call. I host a show on Tuesday nights, Chewed Gum, and we love these kind of calls. So feel free to call anytime.
Yep.
Could I have 10 more seconds, because I want to say something I feel passionate about?
Yes, and also before you do, I also want to say the 17th. The 17th of this month, St. Patrick's Day, I'm also on with Erica for Skeptalk, which is the longest show in history. Yeah. So we'll have 12 hours to dig into it if you want then as well.
I'm gonna keep that in the schedule. Well, what I wanted to say
the last thing.
Yeah, go ahead. This is just irrelevant, because I know there's a lot of theist callers here, and I am a Muslim from the Middle East. Islam does teach a lot of bad things about how you should be mean to people who are on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. I have never subscribed to that, and I feel like if anybody here is a theist who does subscribe to that for whatever reason, if the reasons are as bad as what I hear around here, I just implore you guys to sit down and think, if they're not Christians, if they're not Muslims, if they're not this, then why are you judging them so bad? Do you hate other Muslims as much as you hate them? Because they're not subscribing to your religion the same way, and they're just behaving the way that they should. Please be kind to LGBTQ people. I have a lot of friends that way, and I feel upset seeing them, living such a scary life, I would say. And yeah, just be kind, please.
Yeah.
And that's all.
I love that. Thank you very much, Nasser. I appreciate you. Have an
Thanks,
awesome rest of your day,
Nasser.
dude.
Thank you.
Bye. We were
That was
talking about,
so
like why to believe
sweet.
things, and it was very sweet. And the whole time we were talking about why to believe things, and what evidence is, and how we're not scientists in this and that realm, and how we don't know this. And all I could think about was the words of the great American poets Violent J and Shaggy Two Dope, who once said, "Fire, water, air, and dirt, fucking magnets. How do they work? And I don't want to talk to a scientist. Y'all motherfuckers lying and getting me pissed." That's where we get
Brilliant
religion
words.
from, right there. That's
Oh,
it. Really
man.
summarized when he's
If
asking
they would
why do
just
people
say
believe
that,
this shit. That's it. That's it. He's asking how do we
oh,
believe and why do we believe these crazy things. Insane Clown Posse spells it out for you very well.
incredible. Love it. We've got two last callers to get through. We'll try to get through them quickly. Do you
Hey,
want
we
to
got
talk
Jane
to
back.
Jane first real quick?
Yeah, let's get Jane. She was waiting for like 2 hours.
Awesome. Let's see.
Hello, is
Hey,
it working
Jane.
this time? Hey, hi
Yes.
You
there.
are. Yes, you're on.
Oh, yay. I was worried about that. That's good to hear you guys. Hey, Forrest. And sorry, I don't know the co-host.
I'm Promise. All good.
She's also Forrest. You can call her Forrest too.
No, my name is
two
Promise.
Forrest.
We're just two people here with words for names. So
Mhm.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I see. Okay. Well,
That's a great way to put that.
anyway, so to get into it, yeah, I've been thinking about a lot of my theory about the sort of public collapse in terms of support of trans rights seen kind of all throughout your country. And we all know that the great state of Texas is currently thinking about banning adult HRT. And I think it's part of what makes this tragedy possible is that there's not really, I don't think there's a plurality of people that are actively hateful or antagonistic towards trans people. I think what it is that they're allowed to wield a sort of a disproportional amount of power because there's just a large sort of apathy from the mainstream when it comes to the defense of these rights. And I think a lot of the social posturing of this trans movement is kind of responsible for seeding this general apathy, which cedes power to a vocal minority. So I just kind of wanted to get into that. Like, I think a case that would demonstrate that is sort of two things, sort of an all or nothing support attitude, which is that you have to adopt every social tenet all at the same time, or you can't be a good ally. And I guess the second one is there has been sort of an emphasis, like an exhaustive emphasis on self-ID, more so than putting forth an understandable defense over what we take to be just kind of the best practice in medical treatment of conditions like dysphoria. And so I think I let's see how to go into it. When it comes to things like neopronouns, one of the problems that I've had conceptually is that usually I think about things like we adjust socially to people making these changes, usually for some sort of like utilitarian rationale, right? Like we think, okay, there's a trade-off between the effort that we put in and the betterment of this person's life. But when people are going through something like that, it becomes kind of questionable in that frame, which is to say there can be
I think if somebody collects enough intersectional labels, there can be a sort of hostility towards them defending any of the concepts or ideas that they adopt. Like just kind of, well, okay, this person is under, protection because they have enough intersectional labels that are applied to them that you just can't question anything that they say or do. And so somebody could adopt, say, create a neogender, and it could be for reasons that are not really particularly useful when actually questioned by the general public as to why they should put in the effort to accommodate this. So, like, if somebody has an incredibly narrow viewpoint,
I'm sorry,
of, like,
Jane, like, there's a couple of things you said here that have been kind of like just not sitting well. Like, so like you're talking about like, somebody has enough intersectionality, enough overlapping, layers of their existence that you can't question them. I don't think that's the case. That sounds like a very like, almost like it's one of those things where you have somebody who's like, I used to be a liberal, but then you guys took it too far, and now I just have to. You get your sense, that kind of thing. It just doesn't sit right. And then also talking about like jumping to neo pronouns when we're just talking about like trans identities and talk like that. I don't think that's necessary or really as big of an issue as you seem to think that it is.
I think it's a
at the end of the
study,
day,
which means, like I'm saying, this is kind of a microcosm of a larger issue. That's why I'm focusing on it, because like I think
the facts remain, Jane. I'm sorry, just like the facts remain that, like, scientifically speaking, we have understood that sex and gender are different things and that they're not necessarily congruent. We have like dramatic amounts of evidence demonstrating this, and the American Psychological Association has agreed that this is not a mental disorder or an illness.
The same thing.
I understand. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm not accusing you of anything. What
I'm too.
Right. I'm not accusing you of anything. What I'm just saying is that the evidence is clearly on this side. And you're right. There are a lot of people who have politicized this science and who don't want to learn the science, or who have already decided that the science is wrong. And we can see the exact same thing. If you want a case study, the case study is climate change, where there are actually studies of people who, the more they learn about climate change, the more they will rally against it and say it's not real, and they will use what they have learned as an argument to say that these scientists believe this, but I know it's not because blah blah blah. And so, like, yeah, there's sometimes people will just spew some nonsense and make it a part of their political identity and dig down into it. And when that becomes big enough, you have a situation like we have now, where I get comments all the time where I'm talking about trans people and people say, this is why Trump won. I'm like, good. So you voted for a fascist piece of shit because you didn't understand science and you didn't like people talking about it. Sorry, you're that way. That's not my fucking problem. And for you,
but I'm not making any of these claims that they're. I'm not.
You're not, and I'm still not talking about you here. What I'm saying about your argument is that it doesn't make any sense to me to talk about the messaging of trans people or talk about the way in which LGBT people as a whole are presenting themselves, or who we're giving a stage to, and how, if someone is this or that flavor of intersectional, whether we take them more or less seriously. I don't think there's any amount of that will actually ameliorate the situation. What it's going to do is validate and justify people who think that these people are too strange and too weird to be on the public eye, and we need to squash them back down into the closet so that we can continue focusing on more reasonable things. And it's very much the same as like the women's suffrage movement, where like we're gonna fight like hell for women's right, but not black women, because that's too crazy. That's a bit too much, and we'll never get anywhere that way. And frankly, I'm just not here for it. So, like, that's kind of the issue I have. It's coming from this position of, like...
I'm not claiming any of that, so I feel like we're just kind of, like, talking. Like, I haven't really outlined my case because I don't believe that sex and gender are synonymous, and I'm not defending that point. I didn't even come on to the call to... Okay, so we can clarify. That's not even what I'm trying to, like, address here. No, what I'm trying to say is that...
I don't think you heard what I said, but that's okay. We'll go on. Okay. We'll try again.
Well, actually, I'll paraphrase what you said just so that you understand that I've picked up on what you said, which is what
Sure.
I think you're trying to say. There's no level of appeasement that would work.
We lost the call.
Jane, are you
again.
there?
No.
Did she drop?
Yeah, the call dropped.
God damn it.
Not opening the lines again for that. Call TACIS.
Yeah,
Jane,
that's what
if
I
you're
was going to
listening,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, call
Please call TACIS.
And maybe go back and listen to what Forrest was saying, because it sounds like based off that response that I don't think you really heard what Forrest was saying. Anyways, well, that was our last call, everybody.
Damn it.
It ended,
I
but
love Arden, can I read what you put in the chat here?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, go for it.
Yeah. What Arden wrote is that Jane is suffering from a really strong case of one of the good ones. And like, yeah, when you have, and you know, Jane, she didn't really get to articulate too much, but from what I heard, it was just like, no, really, I'm an ally. That's why I'm telling you your best strategy is to shut the fuck up. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't dig that, but maybe she has something else to say. Maybe she had something a little bit more nuanced and more detailed. And I hope she lays it all out on TACIS next time Arden is hosting.
yes, sounds great. Well, we had some cool calls tonight. I had fun hanging out. Thanks to everybody in the chat. I'm finally learning how to like at least read some of the chat while it's happening while I host. It's still really hard for me to do multiple technology devices at once, but we're getting there. We're getting somewhere. So, and thank you, of course, to Arden for being the best producer. And we had announcements. Look at us.
Hey.
I feel like I'm losing it's like so late that I'm like losing my mind. Let me pull those up. I'm like, oh, it's not chewed gum. I have no responsibilities. That's not how this works. Okay, so we do have Skeptalk tomorrow. That's going to be with Aaron Adair and Owen Morgan. I'm sure that's going to be amazing. And then Chewed Gum is on Tuesday night with Alyssa Lube and Erica, because I am out for the night. And then Wednesday, we have the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow. So that's going to be fun. And then TACIS, which is where Jane can call back, on Thursday with Josie and Ben. That brings us to the Sunday show, which is going to be Matt and don't know who else. And then the Sunday show in the evening, which will be Forrest, and we don't know who else. And then Skeptalk again on Monday. Shannon Q and Aaron Raw. Can I
promote a thing really quick while we're here? Is that cool with you guys?
Please.
So for those who don't know, there's a thing. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now called the National STEM Festival. And it's basically just a massive science fair for kids. Nice. This is what they've written to me. It is the science fair supercharged, a national celebration of the brightest young minds tackling real world challenges. These grades 7 through 12 students have developed solutions with potential to change lives, and this festival provides them with the life-changing opportunities to connect, learn, and grow. Scientists go to this convention. Congress people go to this convention. The head of NASA and the head of the Department of Defense will be walking around here learning about these kids' science projects, these high schoolers and middle schoolers who are the next generation of doctors and scientists in this country. Unfortunately, 3 major companies have just decided to reduce their support just this last week, resulting in a $175,000 funding loss for the National STEM Festival. Despite this setback, they remain deeply grateful for the other companies, individuals who continue to stand up to them, stand up for them. So they have a GoFundMe right now, where they are trying to raise some money back. They've already raised almost $47,000. If you go to that page that I just linked here, I'll put it in the chat again. Oops. This is for the nationalstemfestival.com. Right at the top, it says urgent appeal and a big yellow banner. You can click on that. It'll take you to the GoFundMe. If you can donate and help out, that'd be great. I heard about this on TikTok. Carrie Byron from the Mythbusters is apparently a big part of this organization that runs this thing, and she made a TikTok talking about this. So I immediately sent an email to the CEO of the organization and just said, hey, my name is Forrest. I'm a science guy and I do things online. I will drop everything and come to DC and put on whatever fucking show you want. I will do a stage show. I will do a speech. I will do whatever. and I'll do it for free, and you can bill me as a guy on the thing. You can get more money and profit off of me. And they said, hell yeah. And so I will be at this event. And I will be a STEM ambassador, walking around to the children around the room. Apparently what my job will be is to like encourage kids to like talk more. I'll be teaching them presentation skills. I'll be a mentor to tell them how to get into like good, like progress through college. I'll be grabbing these Congress people and shit and telling them, go look at this guy. Oh, you're the head of NASA. These kids are learning how to do surgery on Mars. Go talk to the, you know what I mean? Like, and that'll be my job. And so if you want to come meet me there and say hello, please do, but fucking donate first. And support this organization, because this is the next generation of great scientists in this country. They need our help. And I have it from some authority, from some people who work for this place that I'm not going to name, that apparently some of the loss of support that they had, some of it was because these people were giving them lots of money and no longer wanted to be a part of the DEI woke fest and all these things. And so they have made the dedication to blame the current political climate, is the language that they are using on their stuff, which I think is very safe for them and very fine. I don't have a problem with that.
And we're going to see more and more of that over the next 4 years too, unfortunately. Abso-fucking-lutely.
So it is a major fucking problem that is because of the Musk and Trump administration right now, making science a political issue. And so if you want to help fight that, this is a great cause to donate to. Help these students. They fought for this. They worked so hard for this. They want to go present their research in front of people that matter and make their lives something different than what it is. You can be a part of that change. You can show up for these kids. Throw $5 in that bucket. If you skip a coffee for a day, give these people $5. And if you're in around the DC area in the next couple of weeks, I literally called Arden yesterday and canceled my appearance on the hang up and shit, because I'm going to be fucking in there. I'm going to be over there doing that instead. So come check me out if you want to come say hello to me.
I love that.
And go to valkailabs.com if you want to see the rest of my events. I'll be putting this on there probably tonight or tomorrow, so you can see that and sign up for it and whatever else you like.
Amazing. Love it. Well, that wraps our show. Thank you so much, crew, mods, screeners, and don't forget to check out our patreon.com/calltheline. Here's our Patreon producers, except I'm pointing the wrong way. Is it that way? Yes, over there. The other side. But thanks, guys.
To the people who said please shout out these companies so we can tell them to fuck themselves, the STEM festival will not, but some people did use the Wayback Machine to look at their sponsors page and find out who it was, and you could do it too. It's pretty cool. Just saying.
Nice.